Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, Week 14 game-by-game review edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and joining me on this lovely Sunday evening, the one, the only MB FantasyLife icon, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. What's up, Dwain?
What's up, PFF superstar Ian? If I'm an icon, like you have to be something even bigger than that. We'll just go with superstar. That was pretty generic. I'm gonna have to up my game, like with my descriptions, for you. But yeah, dude, I'm good. I'm good. How about you?
I'm getting them off saying everyone is the one, the only. Like I've started to notice that like every single podcast guest I would have on. And I like to think that we do have a lot of loyal listeners here, Dwain, but at some point they might call me a fraud if I keep on keeping on with the same intros. So we'll continue to watch the film and get better, which we had plenty of time to do today. 6 weeks on by. So maybe, just maybe, Dwain and I will get through this in under 2 hours. I'm still seeing pretty strong minus 250 odds that we'll go over that time limit, but we shall see. And with that, let's get after it, Dwain. Bengals took down the Browns 23-10, covering as 4-point favorites. The Bengals, America's team, have now covered 18 of their last 21 games against the spread. Remember, good teams win, great teams cover. Under did cash at 47. So sticking with the Bengals at first, Dwain. Unfortunate injuries here. We got T. Higgins, who barely played with a hamstring. We also had Tyler Boyd, literally on their first pass attempt of the game, have what I believe was only a second regular season drop of the last 2 seasons. His first one was that brutal dropped 18-yard touchdown last week, and his second drop now dislocates his finger. So I'm not a doctor. Seems like when your job is to catch footballs, though, for a living, that's probably not good, Dwain. So I'm not exactly sure what the timeline we're looking at, but it would make sense that Boyd's going to be working out less than 100%. With Higgins, I mean, it's an injury that popped up on Thursday. Like he wasn't even listed on the injury report going into the week. So we were feeling good about it. Clearly not at 100%. And unfortunately, we've seen him have games this year where he barely plays. And I feel like the Bengals probably know that they're not going in maybe with a full snap counts allotment. So if you take them out of the equation, we're obviously looking at just a mega potential, even more eruption spots down the stretch for Jamar Chase than we would otherwise expect. But overall thoughts on these injuries, and if there could be, hey, some random waiver wire darlings down the stretch, because not too many waiver wire wide receivers with a chance to catch footballs from Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think whoever gets to settle into the slot role, like potentially, because we know the slot role, you get protected. You're going to play more against linebackers, safeties, especially when the league runs so much zone, that kind of thing. So the double injury sent Trenton Irwin, the normal slot receiver, he had to go play outside. And Trent Taylor, we haven't heard from Trent Taylor in a while, but he was out there playing in the slot. He had an 89% route participation. But I mean, Trenton Irwin is the one that's kind of shown us a little bit this year, Ian, but not like a lot. I mean, he had a 7% target share today. Targets per route run haven't been high. Like to your point, like he could still come through. Like as Joe Burrow, my thought process is probably that, you get Hayden Hurst back next week. Hopefully you get the backs more involved in the passing game. That's probably the more likely way that this works out. And then what you just said, like Jamar Chase, he had a 50% target share today. So if you have Jamar Chase and you're heading into your fantasy playoffs, you're about to absolutely just freaking destroy some people. Like it's about to go down. Like you're going to be seeing 12 to 15 targets a week. And we all know what Jamar Chase can do when you give him that kind of volume. So you should be super stoked about that. We'll have to keep an eye on it. We'll see what happens with Higgins. It does suck though, because basically they lost him in warmups today.
Yeah.
And then he comes out and plays just that a little bit that first drive. And Zach Taylor is basically like, yeah, we knew we weren't going to have him. We're like, dude, well, like, come on, like, let us know something so we can get him out of our freaking week 14 trying to get into the playoffs lineups. But anyway, Zach, you've made bigger mistakes than that in your past. So I guess we'll let it go.
I need real life football analysts for this week and beyond to give us a little respect here, Dwain. We got some big time playoff races here. I saw one person venture to say that Kenneth Walker doesn't need to be rushed back for their Thursday night game. Well, the hell are you talking about? Of course he should be rushed back, man. We need him more than ever. All hijinks aside, yes, with Jamar Chase, it is scary that he's still like, this wasn't a down game by any stretch of the imagination, but he obviously has that one hitter quitter ability to take the ball in the end zone from anywhere on the field. And even in a game where he didn't have a catch longer than 20 yards, you look up and he's probably going to be a top 5 finisher on the week. Final note in the passing game, I will just say the Trenton Irwin 45-yard touchdown. Hey, it was a 45-yard touchdown, well-designed flea flicker. I would not expect him to get too many of those on a consistent basis moving forward. Only other thing to talk about on the Bengals side of things, Dwain, is Joe Mixon returning to action after missing 2 weeks with that concussion. We did see him have 59% of the snaps, a team high 14 carries. However, just 2 targets out there. Pirine was still plenty involved. And this 60-40 split is indeed different than what we've seen earlier this year. Now, in the past, this was more of a problem to get Mixon out there on passing downs, but we had seen more 70-30, even 75-25 pre-injury for Mixon. How much of you thinks that Pirine playing very well over the past 3 weeks earned a little bit more of a role, and how much of you thinks that, hey, they were just using Mixon back in?
I mean, it's tough to say, honestly, but I mean, you typically don't expect like the concussion to, especially when you've had as much time off as Mixon, to be a factor. It's like you're either ready or you're not. But I know that we have seen certain players get eased back in after the concussion. So it could also be the fact that, to your point, Pirine just played really well. It was really back to kind of the Mixon utilization that we've always feared, for the last 2 years, which is really around 60% of the rushing attempts. He had 61% today. And then 85% of the long down and distance went to Samaje Perine. Also, Ian, 100% of the snaps inside the 10 went to Samaje. Oh, man, it's one. I got to pop this thing open. I did this last week. There was 1 snap inside the 10. So it's only 1. So forget what I said, folks. But it is 100%. I'm not lying to you, but just disregard it. But the short down and distance stuff, which is really like what we care about the most, that usually translates to the inside the 5 carries. It was still mixing 67% to 33%. But I do think we have to worry a little bit that Pirine's going to be a little bit more involved. Now, they didn't use the 2-minute offense today. We have seen Mixon earlier this year really take the 2-minute offense before the injury. And so that had kind of been a plus for him, even though Pirine was still getting the long down and distance stuff. But it was a lot closer than usual today. Like you mentioned, 59% of the snaps to Mixon, 43% to Pirine. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. I mean, it's 1 week. I don't think there's much we can do with it right now. Like we'll probably rank Mixon as a low-end RB1 again next week. And if we see this again, we'll have to adjust. I mean, there's not a lot of adjusting we can do. Like if you're going into your fantasy playoffs and you have Mixon, like, you're going to treat him like a low-end RB1. We'll see what happens next week. But, I mean, you're still playing in a really good offense. And, again, I think they could get the backs more involved in the passing game. We've really seen it, actually, over like the last several weeks before today. They've been a much bigger factor. So I think that could also be something that could come to fruition if we have Tyler Boyd and Higgins out.
Going into Sunday, only Austin Eckler had more expected PPR points per game than Joe Mixon. So, yeah, he's a little bit of room to drop, and he's still going to be a must-start RB1 in lineups of all shapes and sizes. In regards to Pirine, he did have 2 drops out there, also had a pretty nice touchdown run. So, I'm not sure that, 60 minutes of time is going to lead to any playing time deductions, but just something to keep an eye on here in the last few weeks of the season. On the other side of the ball, Deshaun Watson and the Browns offense, they did play a lot better in those 10 points look. And hey, again, you guys have your feelings about Deshaun Watson. That's fine. On the field, though, PFF passing grade up 10 points from last week. Yards per attempt went from 6 to 6.6. Best of all, Dwain, was just the fact he was more accurate out there. I mean, the adjusted completion rate went from 57% last week, skipping in one ball after another, to 83% while actually throwing downfield. Now, it didn't lead to a ton of big results on the scoreboard. They were close on several times, though. I mean, I'm not sure if they're officially going to be drops, but there was actually a sequence where they turned the ball over on like the 6-yard line because they were moving the ball up and down the field. First, Cooper had a potential 6-yard touchdown go off his hands high. And then on the next play, Donovan Peoples-Jones had a fade, couldn't quite come down with it either. And on the first drive of the game, man, the Browns probably should have scored a touchdown. They bring in Jacoby Brissett on 4th and 1, basically like, hey, we're going to QB sneak it. That's what we always do. They call a well-designed pass, and Donovan Peoples-Jones was open for a 25-yard score. But yeah, ice-cold Jacoby Brissett coming off the bench does indeed overthrow him. So, I
have to ask, what are the Browns doing there? Because like if I'm the defense, I'm more worried about Deshaun Watson running. So like if the whole idea is that, hey, it's 4th and 1, you don't know what we're gonna do. We may run Jacoby Brissett? Like I don't get it. Like I don't understand. I don't know what the game is they're trying to play. They also did this for a play last week. So there's clearly something they think they're doing here. I'm not sure what it is.
For a while, Jacoby had that insane like quarterback sneak conversion rate going on, but they haven't been as successful over the past month of action with it. It just seemed like they were getting a little too cute. That said, Jacoby makes what was an open throw. We'd probably be saying, oh, what a great call by Kevin Stefanski. So all that aside, I'm basically just trying to say the Browns were moving the ball up and down the field a lot better, I think, than just those 10 points would reflect if he didn't catch it. That said, Dwain, we didn't get an incredible performance from Deshaun Watson, but when you add in the 33 rushing yards, he did crawl his way to 20 fantasy points. So it was tough, to exactly trust him this week. What are your thoughts with Watson down the stretch here? Is he still going to be for you a QB1 that you would start ahead
he's a
of
top
guys?
10, dude.
Okay.
He just threw for 276 today, which you and I have talked about. That's 325 in the year 2022.
Yeah.
Like with the way passing games are working, like it's only his second game back. He had 6 rushing attempts today. He had 7 rushing attempts last weekend. So you're telling me you're going to give me a quarterback that's going to give me 6 to 7 rushing attempts per week. And we've even had Stefanski say that there will be game plans where it will be more than that. So we could have weeks where it's more like 10. He gets more involved in the design run game. And I think we're just going to see him continue to get better and better. And I'm like you, it's like setting aside all the personal stuff. Like I thought this was a big step for on the field. Like this was a nice step forward for Watson. And we're just talking about a fantasy player. That's all we're talking about here. And so for me, with how bad quarterback has been this year, yeah, he's going to be in that low end QB1 range. And if he's going to run the ball this much and he's got weapons that he's showing some rapport with Donovan Peoples-Jones. We already saw him show some rapport with Amari Cooper. Well, he didn't really show the rapport, like that it wasn't accurate. Like the catchable pass thing with Amari was like 30% last week, only 50% this week. Those two have got to get better in sync. Like if Deshaun's really going to go off, like he and Amari, like they've got to be locked in. Now, Amari was dealing with a hip injury coming into this that he picked up on Thursday in practice or Wednesday. I can't remember when it was, but he had a DNP in there. So maybe that was a little bit of a factor. But what I like is that Njoku was back. He was active, Donovan Peoples-Jones. So he really has 3 weapons that he seems to, trust. So I think that they have the firepower. It is an offense that can use play action, do a lot of nice things. I think it's a step forward. I don't see how you can't have him in your top 12.
I think that's fair. I mean, look, maybe the dreams early on of him just immediately regain that top 5 form. No, that's probably not going to happen, or at least it hasn't happened yet. But
man, it could at any moment. Yeah. Like it won't surprise if it's next week. He took a step forward this week.
I'm just saying, I was getting like the Deshaun Watson and Mike White start sit questions this morning, and I said Watson, but like I didn't feel incredible about it, Dwain.
Sure
definitely feeling better moving forward, though, after seeing much better on-field performance. Go ahead.
I still think Watson is one of these players that you could look up and in your playoffs, he's level setting the field for you against the Josh Allens and the Jalen Hurtses. He still has that upside. You may not have seen it yet, but we know that it's in there. And with some of these other quarterbacks that you're dealing with, like Kirk Cousins, it doesn't matter. Like he can get in a great matchup like today and come through for you. But overall, week after week, like Kirk Cousins, if you're facing Josh Allen, you're pretty much going to feel crappy. You're going to feel like I'm losing the quarterback matchup, right? You're going to say the same thing about Derek Carr. You're going to say the same thing about Tom Brady. You're going to say the same thing probably about Jared Goff. So like he's above all of those is the way I think about it. And then if you want to start talking about Geno Smith, you want to start talking about Dak Prescott, names like that, I think he's in that mix with those guys. I think you can make an argument to play one of the others. I mean, Geno's played lights out. Like Geno's scoring over 20 points per game in fantasy. Like you can't just totally diss that dude. So I wouldn't blame someone for playing Geno over him, but I think that's right in the range. And I still believe like he could be the QB1 on any week. I think that upside's still there.
Low-end QB1 the rest of the way. Good job talking that out, my friend. Final note here, you did mention David Njoku coming back from that knee injury, right back to his every down role, which was awesome to see. And he's just been so good this year. I mean, his touchdown, just athletically reaching out 2 weeks after he had that sick one-handed touchdown in the end zone. I mean, 3rd highest graded tight end this year in terms of pure PFF receiving grade, 6th in yards per route run. David Njoku, seemingly, I'm not saying worth every penny. I don't know. It's only 1 year, but the guy is pretty damn good at football. Dwain, we're talking about top 5 tight end the rest of the way. How about that?
Yeah, man. Imagine if Njoku hadn't been hurt this season. Like for every stretch he's been healthy, besides week 1 when he gave us a little scare because you and I drafted him a ton. Like when we missed on our tight ends, like Njoku was kind of like the plan. But other than the games where he's been hurt or out, like Njoku's been pretty money, man. Like, and to your point, yeah, he's a top 5 the rest of the way. Imagine where he'd be if he had been healthy all year. He might be a top 3 tight end already. So I really like what we're seeing from him. And he's getting some really good looks, in the passing game. They're doing some stuff short and deep. Like today was really a lot of short stuff. Like his average depth of target today was 3.5, but he's got a nice role. And it is good to see that he and Watson are kind of starting to maybe get a little bit going together.
Who do you think who's drafted first next year in ADP? Kyle Pitts or David Njoku?
Oh man, I think it'll still be Kyle Pitts when all settles. Like if you ran a poll today, it would be Njoku by a mile. But I think once you know how it goes. Once everybody, just like last year, I remember you and I putting out our first articles with our ranks, and you had CMC number 1 overall, and it like the pitchforks were coming for you. Like you were like, dude, you were an idiot. How is this your job? You freaking moron. I think I had a hot Javonte Williams take before, Melvin Gordon re-signed. Like, you get lit up for this kind of stuff. But the CMC is a perfect example. At the beginning of the offseason, he won't even go in the first round. Well, he's the first overall, second pick by the time we get there. I think Pitts will ultimately be the guy that goes sooner in drafts when all is said and done next year. But it could be close. I think Njoku's making a good case for himself if he can stay healthy.
Bills took down the Jets 20-12. Jets they cover as 9.5-point dogs. The under cashed at 43.5. So on the Bills side of things, couldn't get much going, but when you're Josh Allen, you still find a way to rush for 47 yards and find the end zone. Also threw a touchdown to Dawson Knox where he literally flipped into the end zone and did a full somersault without any of his limbs touching the ground. Very athletic play from Knox. But sadly, Knox was the Bills' leading receiver in both terms of both receptions with 4 and receiving yards of 41. So this was a floor game from the entire Bills passing game, and respect to the Jets defense for being able to cause that. And they've been fantastic all year long. Number 1 in explosive pass play rate allowed, number 1 in contested target rate, number 4 overall in EPA allowed per pass play. So I think, Dwayne, look, it's Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Josh Allen. We know they're going to have better days out there. The big story moving forward is what to make of what looked like an ascension of sorts in this backfield last week with James Cook setting season high marks and touches and snaps and all that. Now, on the other side of things, Nyheim Hines also played a lot more last week than he had in his previous games with the Bills. How did this backfield look to you in the handy-dandy behind-the-scenes utilization metrics?
It looks nasty. It looks gross. You had 50% still to Singletary, but the days of him getting that 65, 75, 80% like we saw even just not so long ago, Ian, like 3 weeks ago, we were getting those kind of performances or utilization outputs from Singletary. They're probably over. James Cook was second with 41%, and then Nyheim Hines was at 17%. So all 3 guys involved. Rushing attempts, though, which is where we saw James Cook really outperform Singletary last week. It was Singletary leading the way, but man, only 38%. Now, that's including Josh Allen's carries. He had 33%. So, like, if you just ran it down to the backfield, Singletary is around half the carries for the running backs. But Josh Allen's a real factor, man. He's going to still carries. So, I think it's just it's a challenge, for this backfield, especially, whenever you're going to be in a pass-heavy offense. So, they're all avoids for me. Like, I don't want Singletary, Cook, or Hines in my line. I didn't want him in my lineup this past week just because of the unknown. But I was hoping maybe we would come out of this and be like, okay, maybe James Cook can be. No, I wouldn't have any of these guys in my lineups moving forward if possible.
I was trying to actually kind of equate these backfields to an extent about James Cook and Zonovan Knight not getting too carried away for this week, because I just was trying to make the point that if you look at where they were relative to where they are now, like 3 weeks ago, yeah, they're big time risers. That's why we're all talking about them all the time. That's why they're on the cover of all these waiver wire articles and podcasts and all that. But we're still talking about guys in 3 running back backfields, or at least we were in Buffalo. Dwayne, you spoke it into existence. I did not think you were, I knew you were trying to tell the truth. I just doubted the Jets would make it happen. Ty Johnson out of the picture in New York. First Jeff Smith is gone. We've gotten Ty Johnson out of here as well. That said, Michael Carter did lead the way in terms of pure snaps. But guess what, Dwayne? We don't play in a points per snap league. We're usually playing points per reception league. Zonovan Knight all of a sudden shaping up to be a solid RB2 down the stretch. And don't look now, but this schedule gets tasty. I believe it's a top 6 schedule the rest of the way for the running back position. In particular, weeks 15 through 17, they're getting the Lions, the Jaguars, and the Seahawks. Fantastic mixture there of defenses we want to attack with offenses that should actually keep their foot on the gas and be able to score some points in their own right. Thoughts on Zonovan Knight here down the stretch?
Yeah, Knight looks great. 77% of the rushing attempts today. So 17 carries. He had 2 more targets, again, 2 catches. Not quite as productive in the passing game, but still getting targeted. Only had 6 yards today. And when you listen to the staff talk about him, they love him. Yeah. And it's not just that they love him. They talk about how he's different than the other guys they have. And you hear them very emphatically. Yeah, they're like, hey, he's not going anywhere. And if you look at him and you watch him run, and if you just look at his nickname, it's freaking Bam. Like, what do you think this guy can do? He just stylistically gives them that physicality that they want between the tackles. So I I think it's a done deal unless he gets hurt, right? He's probably going to be getting anywhere from 15 to 18 touches per game. Michael Carter is now playing the passing down role. He had 87% of the long down and distance work, 100% of the 2-minute offense, but only 23% of the rushing attempts. So I think you could very easily see, Ian, in a game where the Jets are winning, or they're ahead, you could easily see this be more like, 60% of the snaps and the carries going tonight, and Carter out there even less. Now, if the Jets are trailing, Carter's going to get his opportunities. That's really where he's going to come through, is in the passing game. But for me, this makes Knight low-end RB2. Carter in PPR, is like a mid-range low-end RB3. But in standard half PPR, like he's outside. I don't know. It's going to be tough for him to even be in standard leagues. He can't even be in the RB3 conversation, in my opinion, like moving forward. Half PPR, maybe still there in that low end range. But yeah, I think it's a good thing for Knight. And you mentioned the schedule. Like, it's just a lot of positive things going for Zonovan Knight right now.
Just some context and how good he has been out there. I mean, he forced the week high 9 missed tackles on the ground. That now gives him a rate of 0.41, which is easily number 1 in the NFL. Yeah, and Dwayne's laughing.
The NFL average is 0.17. He's tripling that almost.
I try not to throw random decimals out here where you guys just don't even know relative to how good that is. Like Javonte Williams last year, I believe, set the single season record at 0.31. So we're talking about literally 33% better than that. And that's what Zonovan Knight has been. Small sample size, but I'd rather you be awesome in a small sample size than terrible in a small sample size. The Jets love him. We love him. Zonovan Knight, inexplicably, Dwain, shaping up to be this year's Rashad Penny, perhaps. I mean, it's looking pretty good for him.
Maybe 24% of his carries today went for 10 plus yards. Like, the dude's not, he's not just a sometimes when you think of that early down banger, right, you really just think of a guy, just grind out 3 yards. Like, you're talking about him creating missed tackles. His yards after contact are strong. Like, he creates these longer runs. Like, he's just doing a lot of positive things, man. It's could it all change at any moment? Yeah, but you and I both know, like, once you've won the confidence of your coaching staff and you're playing, well at running back, like, volume's king, man. And I just don't think his volume's going to change. And I don't expect his performances to immediately just turn into, sucky performances out of nowhere.
Couple injuries. Corey Davis did get ruled out with a head injury. Obviously, if he is going to miss some time, that will now put Garrett Wilson already at the top of the.
It's Elijah Moore season. Come on, it's Elijah Moore season. Is it finally here, Ian? We've waited. If you drafted Elijah Moore, man, you probably, hopefully you didn't have to draft him too early. But 92% of routes today. He led the team in target share, Ian. He led the team at 21%.
I don't want to get hurt again, Dwain. I just don't want to get hurt.
I don't want to get hurt either. I don't want to get hurt either. But I'm here to get hurt.
It's looking good as long as Mike White stays under center. That is the other injury we got to be looking out for. With his rib issue, he did have to exit and then return twice. I mean, this dude's seriously playing through the pain. So definitely keep an eye on those injuries. But at this point, and we've seen it over the last few weeks, Flacco is the backup, and we've seen Flacco put together some big games with Elijah Moore. Tentatively, Dwain, I don't think we're going to see Zach Wilson again the rest of the year. So definitely Garrett Wilson, and maybe, just maybe, Elijah Moore doing some good things down the stretch. Maybe Tyler Conklin too. 8 targets today, but obviously lesser extent than those other guys. All right. Our Cowboys took down the Houston Texans, and one that was way too close to capturing the win, 27-23. Houston did cover at 17.5 point dogs. The over cashed at 44.5. So Dak and company, not their best game from start to finish. Houston played spirited. It's a week-to-week league, Dwain. Tough to win a football game in the NFL, whatever you want to say about this one. It was a fantastic 98-yard drive by Dak Prescott and a lot of Dalton Schultz there down the stretch to go eventually win the game with a short 2-yard plunge from Ezekiel Elliott. So did have a lot of sheeshes that kind of made this game so close in the first place. I mean, look, love Scott Hansen on red zone, but he's like, how is this happening in the fourth quarter? And it's like, well, Scott, I mean, Dalton Schultz dropped a 15-yard touchdown before halftime. That didn't help. They immediately marched down the field to start the second half, and Zeke gets stuffed not once, but twice at the goal line. They have to turn the ball over on that. I mean, they just had a lot of opportunities all game that they just continued to miss out on. I mean, they did score a touchdown on the opening drive, but Michael Gallup probably should have had like a 68-yard house call on one of the first plays of the game. A little bit of pressure, and Dak underthrew it. And I had another sheesh too there at the end where Zeke did score, but Michael Gallup probably should have had that 2-yard touchdown. Big hit in the ground, ended up forcing it out. So the passing game, like, I'm not worried about CeeDee Lamb's dud. It wasn't opportune for you guys trying to make the fantasy playoffs, but still anyone's idea of a weekly wide receiver one. How are you looking at this run game? Because we have now seen back-to-back weeks where Ezekiel Elliott, not Tony Pollard, has regained overall the overall lead in terms of running the football. Overall, now 4 weeks of them being back, we do have Pollard still leading the way in terms of snaps at 145 to 127. That said, Zeke does have 8 more rushes over the span. Pollard has 6 more targets. So as long as the Cowboys keep scoring a shit ton of points, and ever since Dak's been back, they have been the number 1 ranked scoring offense in the NFL. I think both guys, Dwayne, should be in far more fantasy lineups than not. I mean, this matchup helped this week, but I know a lot of people with the buys, with the matchups, I mean, you could argue they were both RB1s, and even if not, again, guys that should have been in far more lineups than not. Having 32 teams playing next week, though, and a Cowboys offense that isn't going to be playing the Texans every week. Thoughts on how we're treating Pollard and Zeke down the stretch in this fairly evenly split backfield?
Well, yeah, I mean, Zeke, I think since Dak's back now, he had 17.1 today. I want to say before that was averaging 17.5 points basically per game in PPR. And so he's going to hang around right around that. I think the way the Cowboys are using them right now is perfect. And the main part is Tony Pollard, 64% route participation today. He handled 52% of the 2-minute offense. Zeke still got a little bit of the passing down work, but most of the long down and distance all went to Pollard. That's all we've ever asked for. We've always said, look, fine, keep Pollard at 35, 45% of the rushing attempts. Let Zeke handle 50 to 60, but let Pollard play more of the passing downs and actually throw Pollard the ball, right? Yeah. Earlier on the season, like there were a couple games where he had the routes and they weren't getting him the ball. So yeah, I think this is, because Pollard still has that, he has that big playability. Like he's basically, in the role, that we're looking for a lot of times when we're drafting guys in round 3 or 4 of fantasy, right? That's kind of what we thought Travis Etienne would be this year, right? Under 50% of the rushing attempts, but getting the passing down work. It's what we thought about DeAndre Swift last season when we drafted him. We'll talk about him more later. So he's kind of in that mold. And I mean, he's making the big plays. So I think Pollard's fine. I look at him as a high-end RB2, low-end RB1. And I look at Zeke. He's a little more matchup dependent, Ian, but I think you just have to give him credit. Like he's shown, like over these last several games, like he can score. So I think he's more of a low-end RB2, but not quite in the range where I think of some other guys that are complete boom busts like Deonta Foreman. There's some other guys that you have to mix into that group. I think Zeke's like a tier above them, right? Just because the Cowboys' quality of offense. So maybe that makes him more of a mid-range RB2. But Dallas is also a run first, not a run first, but they're a run balance, right? If we're going to Madden, Ian, and we're picking out our playbooks and you got to pick Dallas, they're probably calling it either balanced, pass balance, run balance, like somewhere in there. Today they had to throw a little more because it was unique. But even though they trailed most of the game, they only dropped back 59%. That's below the league average for someone trailing as much as they did today. So I think both guys can be fine.
In Jacksonville next week, and that should be a game with a game total well over 50. Have seen Jacksonville. I mean, look, Ravens went for 162 on the ground against them a few weeks ago. Certainly think that at least for next week, before we get to the Eagles and Titans, 2 big stiffer matchups down the stretch, we can be feeling good about both these guys. Other side of the ball, seriously.
Hey, real quick on Cowboys. So 2 weeks in a row, we've seen Dalton Schultz up over the 80% route participation. Last week, 91%. This week, 86%. Like his targets per route have been great. Like every freaking week, he's just been battling that MCL injury. This is the healthiest I think we've seen him. He gave you 14.7 fantasy points today. As long as he keeps this route participation up where it's at, and he had a 26% target share today. He led the team. So I think Schultz is top 3 tight end the rest of the way. Now that we've finally seen him in back-to-back games out there in a full-time role, seems like the knee's better.
You put him over Kittle if Debo's out?
Yes.
Ooh.
I think you just have to, man. Like he's getting targeted way too much. Like Kittle definitely is, moving up the ranks if Debo's out. But yeah. I mean, Schultz is just, dude, we got to give him credit. Like he's earning targets like crazy. He's doing more than I thought he could, like from a ability to earn targets so far. These last several weeks, like, dude, he's 23, 24, 25, 26% every single week targets per route run. But now the routes are there. And that's how you get today a 26% target share.
If he's not at 3, he's at 4. So I'm not going to completely, I'm not going to talk about breaking your glasses or anything on this one, Dwayne. Okay, all right. On the other side of the ball, I usually don't have many good things to say about the Texans. Let's not get too carried away here. But Dameon Pierce did go ahead, find the end zone, I believe, for the first time since week 8. Look good out there. Did unfortunately suffer an ankle injury and was ruled as questionable to return. So, Dwayne, I don't think there's any value to be had here if Dameon Pierce misses time, because we did have Benjamin even working his way into the fold with Dario Ogunbowale and Rex Burkhead continuing to do their thing. If Dameon Pierce is out, are you going to have a Houston Texans running back ranked inside the top 30? I will not.
No. In fact, we've got a data viz awesome person that helps us out over at Fantasy Life, Anthony Reinhardt. You guys can see him on Twitter. You've probably seen a lot of his cool stuff, but I submit to him usually on Sundays or Monday morning, like guys that we want to see some data viz stuff on for guys that got injured. And we want to see what did the offense look like after they left. I didn't even put the Texans on the list because I'm not using Dari Ogunbowale or Rex Burkhead. And I had already seen that Eno didn't really play much. Like Eno would be my guess, right? Like if I had to pick one up and use him, it would be Eno. But I was like, I'm not even going to make him make a visual for this because like it's just freaking nasty. And I'm not telling anyone to start any one of these dudes like in their fantasy playoffs.
Rex Burkhead last year did win some people some money when he had that big week 16.
He won Levitan like
you look at this
money.
Man. Yeah, but I mean, look, they got the Chiefs, the Titans, and the Jaguars these next 3 weeks. So maybe we can build something up here against the Chiefs and the Titans, figure it out, get a reasonable week 17 matchup. At a minimum, week 15. No, we do not feel at all good enough about this still evolving situation to trust anybody with a fantasy playoff game on the line. Finally, though, someone else to talk about. We have Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins out of the picture. Chris Moore, 10 catches for 124 yards, almost had a touchdown, got down just short of the 1 yard line there at the end of the game. Look, the one thing that pisses me off about Chris Moore, Dwain, is he wears number 15, so it just makes me sad about the entire Will Fuller situation every single time he kept making a play out there. But putting aside just my own ridiculous biases and inability to get over a player that hasn't played in like over 2 years, he looked good out there. That said, if Nico Collins is going to come back next week, doesn't seem as severe as Brandon Cooks, but, both guys seemingly didn't have that much of a chance of playing this week. I don't think this offense can we haven't seen the offense enable even one consistent fantasy pass catcher. I think it'd be, pretty ridiculous for us to think that two could emerge down the stretch. Let's say Nico and Cooks do stay out. Thoughts on Chris Moore here. And I said those matchups weren't good for the run game. That said, if we do look at the Chiefs and the Titans over the next 2 weeks, I mean, those are two teams that we consistently see bottom 5 in fantasy points against wide receivers.
Yeah, I think you can put Chris Moore in the wide receiver 4 conversation. Like I don't think you'll ever really know which week is he going to pop his head into the wide receiver 3 range. Like this week, he's really wide receiver 2 pushing on the wide receiver 1 threshold. We'll see how the rest of the week. It was a pretty bad week for receiver, right? We've already talked about, Stephon Diggs and where he finished, and there was a lot of guys that didn't score many points today at the position. So Chris Moore's going to end up with a really good finish. He's not historically been someone that's played really well, Ian, and he's been in the league for a while. So these kind of guys, it's tough to really see consistency. Like, could it happen? Yeah, but it's tough for me to think of him any more than a thing like. Tough for me to think of him as anything more than a wide receiver 4. Mass, credit to him, like coming out here and doing it today. And look, he is a guy we've seen him from time to time flash. Like he'll pop up and have a big game. Wasn't he with Baltimore before he was with the Texans last year, but I think before that he was with the Ravens for several years. I believe so. And he even there would come through with occasional games. This was probably his best game of his career. I haven't gone back to look at it yet, but yeah, wide receiver 4, man.
I'm actually pulling that up right now. I'm curious now, Dwain, to see. It had to be the best game.
Yeah, it's got to be. Like, it's from a target perspective, I would have a hard time believing he's ever had more. He may have had a similar yardage day. I know he's had a 2 touchdown day somewhere in the past. I think last year, actually, with the Texans, he had a 2 touchdown
Last year with
day.
the Texans, he had a 109-yard, 1 touchdown game against the Patriots. So that was a solid performance. Yeah. Okay. Chris Moore, pretty damn good at the game. One more note, Dwain. We actually have multiple notes here with the Texans. Jeff Driscoll had not played an offensive snap since week 2, and he comes out as like their secret weapon, basically playing a hybrid mix of quarterback and tight end. I checked.
They're Taysom Hill?
It's like a middle-class man's Taysom Hill. I did not know there was a lower class than Taysom Hill, but we now have Jeff Driscoll. He has tight end eligibility on Yahoo, Dwain.
Oh, wow.
He does not have it on ESPN. So ESPN, no. The answer is no. On Yahoo, though, I mean, he threw 6 passes. He had 7 rush attempts. I mean, I can't believe we have to do this again after the whole Taysom thing. We need to see another week of this, but like they have already.
It's actually a stronger profile than Taysom because he throws the ball more. Like he's got 7 dropbacks. Like Taysom gets lucky to have 2.
And like I actually think that Jeff Driscoll is capable of throwing a catchable football from time to time, like with his history of being a quarterback. I mean. Maybe. I don't think that Taysom Hill is going to get a chance to start over Dalton down the stretch. Dalton, as much as we wanted to say, oh, it's Dalton, like he's really played great football relative to Andy Dalton this season. What if Jeff Driscoll gets the starting job in like week 16, man, he'd be a top 3 tight end probably. Like Jeff Driscoll as a quarterback, we'd probably have to start
if he
over
takes
Dalton
over full
Schultz.
time. Yeah, we would. If he took over full time as a quarterback, you wouldn't start him over Kelsey.
No.
Now,
oh my gosh.
Mark Andrews needs to freaking do something. You might start him over Mark Andrews. I mean, look, Mark Andrews, all the underlyings have been there, but he hasn't performed well in 6 weeks. So
I mean, Dwayne, we got some teams. We got some teams with Dontrell Hill, who we'll talk about if that injury is serious. But some of these random handcuff running backs, man, Jeff Driscoll's on the radar. I can't believe it, but
yeah, this is where we are.
Yeah, but no, I mean, hey, I was saying a couple weeks ago, Taysom could be that potential wild card league winning lottery ticket out there at tight end. Apparently now Jeff Driscoll. Yeah, that's what I meant, man. That's all it is. So, all right, Lions took down the Vikings 34-23, covering as 2.5-point favorites, despite the win discrepancy over cash with ease at 51.5. So, Lions offense, it's our weekly routine. I list all the Amon-Ra St. Brown receptions in his last 16 games now, not impacted by injury. 10, 8, 8, 9, 8, 8, 8, 9, 6, 7, 4, 10, 7, 9, 11, most recently 6. Just always good to see that even in a relative down game for Amon-Ra, because he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 that he pretty much has been for last calendar year. Still look up, and he has 6 catches for 68 yards. Chark, Reynolds, and Jameson Williams scored touchdowns. Unfortunately, did not see Jameson Williams' usage continuing to rise. He just had a completely broken coverage 41-yard touchdown on his first career catch. So as much as I want to believe in DJ Chark, Dwayne, someone that we were not overly high on before the season started, but I think we respected enough in the offense where he was going. That was always built, though, on Jameson not being involved. We've seen DJ Chark, when he came back from IR, ease back into action. Clearly, they're doing that with Jameson Williams. Are you confident enough in Chark or Reynolds holding off Williams to trust them down the stretch? Because this Lions offense is balling. Goff is throwing for 300 plus and 3 touchdowns with consistency out here. Thoughts on non-Sun God Lions receivers?
Yeah, I mean, you could have the rug pulled out from under you at any moment with it. But on one of my main event teams today, with Dave Hubbard, we put DJ Chark in our lineup. We put him in over Jamal Williams.
Ooh.
We just felt better about this game, for Chark. So we'll have to see. I think right now, Jameson, he only had a 15% route participation. So they didn't just have him run block, the whole time today. He actually got to run a few routes other than the one that he caught for a touchdown. But for now, yeah, I do trust Chark. And it could easily be Josh Reynolds, right? That gives up some of the playing time. It probably, Ian, turns into a 3-way rotation between those guys. Khalif Raymond is definitely Jameson Williams kind of passed Khalif Raymond today. They were pretty close, but it could be a rotation with all those guys. I think the only one that's for rest of season where we just know they're locked in is Amon-Ra.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Penei Sewell is the best receiver on the team. I'm sure you saw that catch.
Man. You look good.
I'm sure you saw that catch. But Chark would be second for me. If I had to rank them today, rest of the season, I would still rank Chark like he's doing it. He's out here leading the team. He didn't lead the team in air yards today. Josh Reynolds did. But over the last 3 games, his air yards have been really good. What I like is it's complementary, right? What he and Amon-Ra St. Brown do are opposite things.
Yeah.
Right. Amon-Ra is going to work the intermediate, the underneath. He's going to keep the chains moving. Now he makes big plays too, but Chark's really there to stretch things out vertically, so I think they can coexist together, but it will be interesting to see what happens with Williams. The big thing here is really Swift.
Yeah.
Swift today, it was really the same, honestly, as almost as last week. Except the rushing attempts went back down again, Ian. Last week we saw the rushing attempts get up to basically right around 50%. They dropped back to 21%. He still had his passing down roll, had 100% of the 2-minute offense, but freaking Justin Jackson got 73% of the long down and distance. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but we really thought piecing it all together, the injuries had been there, had been off the injury report for a couple of weeks. The coaches were talking positive about DeAndre Swift. It really felt like everything was coming together for him. And I know sometimes we can wish cast because these players, we know they're good. We know DeAndre Swift is awesome. Yeah. So we want him to be on the field. And so I know that sometimes can cloud our vision, but I was pretty surprised today to see the way this worked out. But the snap splits, 38% to Jamal, 33% to Swift, 30% to Justin Jackson. Jamal got 50%, of the rushing attempts, whereas last week, it was down around 40. It wasn't even quite to 40%. So It's going to be interesting. Looks like a nasty 3-way committee. And it's going to be hard. Like you're playing in a good offense, so they could come through, but it's going to be hard to rank them is going to be my challenge. Like, I feel like right now, none of them I can trust enough to think about it. Anything above like a low end RB2.
When you can't even get your lead back with the snap rate starting with a 4, like a 45% snap rate, it's gross, but we're talking about 38% is the leader. That is rough. DeAndre Swift now touches since returning from injury 10, 5, 7, 8, 9, 18, back down to 9. So, yeah, man, like with a full slate of all 32 teams playing, I don't know if any of these guys are going to be top. I think Swift will still crack the top 24 just in full PPR, but it's going to be lower, man. Like certainly not the step forward that we were hoping we were going to get after last week. Clearly, Justin Jackson isn't going anywhere. And hell, I mean, Craig Reynolds, I know is on IR, but he could be nearing a return too. They want to keep 3 backs involved. As long as they keep scoring, hey, I mean, even when Swift, I listed those touches. I mean, there were weeks where he still saved his value just by being good and getting into the end zone. Just not going to be easy, but great job by the Lions offense. Again, though, first 4 games of the year, number 1 scoring. Over the next 4 games, they were 31st. Ever since then, second just behind the Cowboys. On the other side of things, Dwayne, Justin freaking Jefferson, 11 catches, 223 yards. Should have been an even bigger day, man. I didn't see this one live, but I got thrown to my attention later. Twitter's cool like that sometimes. Had this 39-yard gain late in the game, fourth quarter. Should have been a 71-yard touchdown. It did not look like he stepped out of bounds at all, but they blew it dead. And when they blow it dead, you can't take the extra yards he had. So really it could have been an even more nuclear game. It didn't impact the final score. Like that drive ended with a Cousins touchdown to KJ Osborne, but just incredible from Justin Jefferson. And as friend of the show, John Daigle notes, Justin Jefferson is now on pace for 1,961 receiving yards, only 3 yards shy of Calvin Johnson's single season record of 1,964. So, hey, man, number 1 receiver in receiving yards since 2020 now. Jefferson, Devontae, Tyreek, Stephon Diggs. Who would you want on your team if you could pick one for the next 3 weeks?
Oh, it's probably Jefferson. I mean, look, like he can do everything. And I mean, if you're just saying 3 weeks, though, it probably is still Tyreek. Like I feel like Tyreek is just insane.
As long as his health is good.
It's freaking, yeah. But man, what a list. Like, I mean, you're not going wrong with really any of these dudes. I love all of them. But I do think that like Justin Jefferson, like what he's doing, like it's just such a complete game, Ian. Like, Tyreek's got obviously the elite speed, right? Out of all those guys, can burn you from anywhere. But like Jefferson, like just his ability play in, play out, to get open, and he can still beat you deep and do all the other things. Nobody else has cheetah speed, but he's just an all-around baller, man. Like I love him.
Dalvin Cook, just 15 carries for 23 yards. Did find the end zone to help save the day. But as we talked about, like Dalvin Cook hasn't been disappointing this year. His workload has been disappointing relative to past years. I want to say coming into this game, he was like the RB12 in PPR points per game with the RB13 in expected PPR points per game. So career low marks in targets per game and accordingly receiving yards per game will do that to a man. Still going to be someone in the top 15 with better days ahead. Just wasn't out there today. And yeah, Kirk Cousins, 425 yards, 2 touchdowns. Hell of a job, 4 big time throws. Just didn't get the one thing that matters in real life, and that is the win. TJ Hawkinson keeps on keeping on. I mean, he's going to be a top 5, 6 guy the rest of the way. So we actually have started to build back a little bit of a tier of tight ends, Dwayne. I mean, for a while there was like beyond Kelsey, what do we have? And I know it can still be rough. I saw the leaderboard from last week, but yeah, at least in Minnesota, as we've seen for a lot of this year, pretty condensed offense. Even old man Adam Thielen found the end zone today. So yeah, Minnesota Vikings. I know that we've talked about how actually, what's their fraud level based on, their wins and losses and then some of the other point differential metrics. But at least for fantasy, man, a lot of good things happening here. You got anything else you want to go for, Justin?
No, man, we're good. This offense, we know what this offense is. We can move on.
Jaguars took down the Titans 36-22, covering obviously as 3.5-point dogs. The over cashed out a lowly 41.5. Trevor Lawrence, man, just continuing to rack up the big weeks. Last week wasn't incredible against the Lions, but guy gets pretty hurt, with that toe before halftime. Won't give him a break. So really, since he had that 2 interception stinker against the Broncos in week 8, only Joe Burrow has a higher PFF passing grade. That's not your cup of tea. He's 12th in yards per attempt and 4th in adjusted completion rate. And if you say, Ian, we don't care about real life, this is a fantasy football podcast, that's fine. QB9, QB10, QB5, had the QB18 dud last week. He's probably going to be this week's QB1. We were saying before, Dwain, about Deshaun Watson being low-end QB1. Would you start Lawrence over Deshaun rest of the way?
I think they're right there together. Yeah. I mean, I would not blame anyone that does. Like, he's hot right now. Like, he's definitely on a heater. And it's good to see. Like, because we weren't for sure. Like, we had seen a year and a half of Trevor Lawrence, and we just weren't for sure. Like, were we ever going to see it? I'm with you. These last several games, it is starting to come through despite, last week's, stinker, if you will, against the Lions. I know he got hurt in the game. The bigger person that I'm concerned about on this team, Ian, like, what the hell is going on with Travis Etienne? Like, dude, like he's 71% of the rushing attempts, 75% of the snaps, still getting the 2-minute offense, all the stuff we want. 17. Now, I get it. It's a tough matchup. This is the toughest run defense in the league, the Titans. It makes sense, right? The Titans are one of the most run-heavy teams, and they want to stop the run. I guess you're good at what you practice. If you're playing against the freaking Titans running game every day in practice, like you probably get really good at stopping the run when you got to deal with Derrick Henry. But yeah, Etienne, I do wonder, like, is the foot just not right? Like, he just doesn't look the same. He doesn't seem as explosive. It's problematic, and he's not getting any targets. A 0% target share today. So it's tough to stop running him out there, but like Etienne, definitely the confidence meter is down for me.
Yeah, I will say, we saw him face the Lions last week, and that was viewed really as this giant smash spot. And to be fair, we just saw what the Lions did to Dalvin Cook. I know they were probably still going to be ranked as a 32nd ranked scoring defense, but they have done a good job against the run in recent weeks. So I'm not so sure that I'm going to write off, Etienne as just not being a good rusher of the football. But he has had struggles in the passing game, and I think a lot of those drops could be contributing to games like this where they don't involve him in the passing game. And that's just been the unfortunate part here, Dwain. It's not like JaMychal Hasty or any of these other guys. I mean, there wasn't a single running back target out there. Jamal Agnew had 3 who they kind of use him in a gadgety way, but he's still officially a wide receiver. He's not getting consistent, pass blocking snaps or anything like that. So I think Etienne, you've said this about other guys in the past. It's unfortunate, but he has kind of the workload and the profile of an RB1. Probably got to treat him more as a mid-tier RB2.
Yeah, I think that's right. Maybe high-end RB2 for now. Knowing that he could bounce back at any moment. I do wonder if there's something going on with the foot, because since that game, like, I don't know if that's coincidence, or not. He wasn't listed on the injury report at the end of last week, so I'm assuming like he's good to go. But like since the foot issue, like he just hasn't quite looked the same.
They did cut Darrell Henderson, so I don't see any reason that this workload is going to be going anywhere. Yeah. Certainly not making quite as.
And if you thought his foot really was hurt, like, would you be cutting Henderson?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, at least the passing game is thriving. Zay Jones did have another 2 drops out there, but was catching the ball long enough to haul in 8 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown. Again, Lawrence has made so many good throws over the last few weeks, but that touchdown probably should have been picked, went right through the corner's hands, but then into Zay Jones's. So better to be right, or better be lucky than right sometimes.
Zay Jones is the model for Chris Moore. Chris Moore, look at Zay Jones. He did this down the end last year. Remember, you and I we were like, can we buy into Zay Jones? No, we can't buy into Zay Jones. Like, and he kept doing it at the end of the year. And then we looked at him this year. Can we buy into Zay Jones? He did it at the end of last year. Nah, we can't buy into Zay Jones. Like, he's out here. He's playing well. Now, I know it's hit or miss because, typically Kirk is really more the centerpiece. And it's hard for all these guys to go off. But with Trevor Lawrence playing so well, there's just more room, for everybody to really come through. But Zay Jones has played great. So Chris Moore, like, if you listen to this podcast, look at what Zay Jones did. If you can keep that up the rest of this year, you might get paid like Zay Jones. And guess what? Ian and Dwain could be talking about you next year on a podcast.
We'll say that Zay Jones, you could argue he dropped a 21-yard touchdown out there, at a minimum put him down at the 1-yard line. And then he dropped the very next pass that basically had to kill the drive. Etienne did almost save the day. He got just short of the goal line. T-Law had a little read option for a touchdown on his next play. So kind of buried the lead here. My apologies. But Evan Engram, 11 catches, 162 yards, and not 1 but 2 touchdowns out there. Absolute blow performance. And I jokingly tweeted that this would probably be big enough to make him a top 5, or I said a top 3 tight end, for the season long stretch at this point. And I was wrong. Not top 3, but the tight end 4. Shout out to the Athletics, Jake Seeley, for crunching those numbers for me. So Evan Engram, Dwain, tight end 4 on the season, just one consistent great performance after another. Always hanging our hat on Evan Ingram throughout this tight end 4 performance throughout this year. Man, is this the Taysom Hill sucks you missed it, don't chase it game, or is this the look at the ceiling here? How can you have Ingram ranked outside your top 5, top 6? I think I had him tight end 8 or 9 this week, but you know how it is. Once you rank the top 5 or 6 guys, it's like, who knows?
He's a low-end tight end 1. That's what he's been. He's shown us some flashes already, and we've talked about him in the past. We've talked about it. It's tough to predict which other player besides Christian Kirk. Now, Christian Kirk didn't have a big day today. It's tough to predict which one it will be. But Zay Jones has shown that he can do it. Evan Ingram has shown he can do it. Marvin Jones, not as much. He's had a couple of okay games. But now with, again, Trevor Lawrence playing so well, like it's really, it just really brings everyone up like another level. So I don't think it's something where you're going to rank him in your top 6, but we have seen 2 good games in a row. We've seen other good games earlier in the season, but he could easily disappear next week, right? Next week, it could totally be Christian Kirk has a 30% target share. Zay Jones has 25% and Evan Ingram has 10%. I don't think he's established himself as a must go-to guy in the offense. That keeps him as a low-end tight end 1 for me. But hey, now you've seen, like, obviously he's not going to have another game like this, but you have seen there is ceiling here. And so that's always good to know.
Last week when we got the Titans and we were like, oh, okay, should we be worrying about Derrick Henry over these past 3 duds? No, because look at the upcoming schedule. And this was step 1 of that. 121 yards and a touchdown on the ground. We did lose 2 fumbles. The second one's kind of iffy, man. I thought that was more of like a muff snap.
You had a tweet. What was he on pace for after the first quarter?
Oh, bro, it was like 396 yards. Like the fact he only had 2 rushing yards in the entire second half. Like the fact he finished with only 100.
You thought you were getting 40 out of Derrick Henry today after the first quarter. Like, well, so it kind of sucked. That
we might get it next week. We got the Chargers next week, dead last in yards after contact, allowed per carry coming into Sunday night. And then we get the Houston Texans, who have gone 4 straight games, allowing 200 plus rushing yards and 2 touchdowns to Derrick Henry. Oof. So yeah, not that you were ever considering removing the big dog from the starting lineups, but if he got you those playoffs, I have a feeling that he could be leading a lot of you to championship glory. Unfortunately, we did see Dontrell Hilliard get carted to the locker room. I did not see any extra details, but someone in our live YouTube chat, and hey, always appreciate you guys and the positive mindset. Just here to talk ball. Great day to be great as always. They were basically saying it was a special teams play and he got probably knocked out, concussion stuff with Hilliard, which that's terrible. We never want to see anyone get concussed. And I always got to lead us in, Dwain. I've suffered several concussions in my own right, so I feel like I can say this, but the concussion is going to take you out a week or 2, and the leg injuries are probably going to end your season. So just in terms of getting him back, it feels weird to say that we prefer the concussions. That's probably not the right way to say it. The fact he got concussed means he might not be out for the entire season. But man, just with Dontrell Hilliard, we were talking before the show, Dwain, it's someone that if you look at the running backs at the top of the fantasy leaderboard, all the handcuffs and who's like actually still available, Dontrell Hilliard was sticking out as a guy where you brought up your 2018, just complete awesome team you had rolling into the fantasy playoffs, Gurley, Le'Veon, just the absolute best group of guys. And then Deion Lewis out of nowhere actually, had to go win that championship for someone else. I thought Dontrell Hilliard could potentially be that guy with the Derrick Henry injury. Now, knowing he's out, though, does Hassan Haskins become someone we're interested in? I'm not so sure. We have seen Julius Chestnut pretty evenly involved with him throughout the season.
Yeah. Hopefully Hilliard's fine because I do think he fits the profile that you're talking about. But, we'll have to see. The other big name here on the Titans, Chigozie Okonkwo, Ian, tight end, baby.
Yeah.
I think we both had tweets like within probably an hour of each other last week, and we didn't know. And we both
yours is like okay. So when I'm like grinding on Wednesday, I'm article, podcast, and I'll tweet stuff, but I'm not really scanning it. And so Dwain tweeted almost like, word maybe I blew my cover, Dwain. Like people can just tell that I'm full of shit now, and I'm just like I'm just plagiarizing all your tweets after the fact. But like literally, like the 4 same metrics, and we're like small sample size. And you even said maybe we're getting Okwabunum. I think I actually said that right. The Alberto, because as soon as I started seeing these metrics, number 1 yards per outrun, number 1 yards per reception, I was like, this is Dwain's new Alberto. But for this week with Treylon Burks out, we saw him go out there and keep making plays, man, like he's really done all season.
Yeah, man. The route participation still wasn't where we want it to be, but we kind of knew that wouldn't be the case. Only 52%. But he was getting to play some from the slot, which we saw last week, 54%. So I think in games without Treylon Burks, like if you need an upside tight end, like, hey, we played him in a couple of FFPC lineups today. Like put him in there over, I can't remember who we had to bench for him. But, Trey McBride was one. Like we had some where it was just like, I'm like, man, he's probably going to play half the snaps, but at least like he's played well. And so, yeah, he came through, man. 16 and a half PPR points today, 6 targets, 6 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. But yeah, I think the underlying data just tells us this could be a potential star in the future. Again, to your point, very small sample, 25% targets per route run today. That was, really the best on the team for anybody that actually played a decent amount of time today for the Titans. So, yeah, he's a guy that I think you look at still. He's a high-end tight end too. He's going to be boom bust. He's going to be a boom bust guy because
what tight end isn't though?
No, you're right. But they're going to limit his workload. That's what's going to hurt him, right? Not the fact that he can't ball out. It's the fact that he's only going to probably be out there. Like, what did he run today? Like, how many routes did he even run? Like, because the Titans want to be and the Titans trailed today, so the Titans dropped back to pass 74% of plays today. That might be their season high. They don't drop back that often. Anyway, I don't have it right in front of me, like how many routes he actually ran today.
He's gonna be Gen Z Jonnu. Like that's what he is, and that's fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be like you're gonna be hoping for 20 routes, like in the role that he's in. But like if he can come through, I do think Treylon being out is definitely a factor.
Eagles took down the Giants 48-22, covering easily as 7-point favorites over cash at 44.5. Eagles got there all on their own. And just another week of this offense looking unstoppable, man. I knew they'd be able to run the ball against the Giants. I mean, league worst defense in rushing yards before contact per carry going in, which is why, we were so much back in on the Miles Sanders experience after last week's disappointing game against the Titans pass funnel defense. But when they threw the ball, I mean, Devontae Smith's going out there making one big play after another. And I hate to criticize him, but he probably should have even had another touchdown, 21 yards, where he just couldn't quite get that second foot down. I mean, Miles Sanders even almost had a 30-yard catch down the sideline on a throw from Hurts. That was fantastic. I mean, Jalen Hurts out here was efficient as a passer, and I don't even think that tells the entire story. Just some of the things he was able to do scrambling and still making throws off script and off platform. I mean, that's the big difference. Not to group. They play football very differently, but Jalen Hurts and like Tua, Hurts can be so good in and out of structure. And I just haven't quite seen the same from Tua out of structure. That said, who has the higher ceiling in structure? We don't need to go in the whole conversation, but Jalen Hurts, man, fantasy, real life. The dude is a quarterback's job is to score a lot of points. And this year, only the Chiefs have done a better job of that than Jalen Hurts in this Eagles offense. So it's something we talked about last year in the offseason where it's like someone like Jalen Hurts, even their floor, just as a run heavy quarterback who we saw last year, like just change the game and just force you to defend him differently. That alone gives you a pretty nice floor. We've seen that when Lamar Jackson and the Ravens can't really get the ball going through the air. They're still an above average offense. But when you combine one of the league's best rushing quarterbacks with someone putting up as good at passing numbers as anyone, you have the league's second ranked scoring offense, and there's freaking amazing fantasy options everywhere. So Jalen Hurts, fantasy, probably not MVP because I guess that's Josh Jacobs, but probably runner up at this point, Dwayne.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like if you have Jalen Hurts, you love it. But there's really nothing else. We know what this offense is. It's pretty well condensed. The backfield looked the same. To your point, Miles Sanders, when you get the nice matchups and the efficiency can be there playing in a really good offense, that's the weeks you really want to, make sure you're going to start him every week for the most part. But he definitely has shown that he's very sensitive to the matchup. Like we've definitely seen that with Miles Sanders. But when you're an offense like this that scores as much as they do, like Miles Sanders is definitely going to have his opportunities. It is nice to, I love your tweet that you put out every week, is like, hey, Miles Sanders, 0 touchdowns on X number of touches last year, and how many does he have now on the season total?
Oh, funny you asked, man. I happen to have it pulled up right here. 0 touchdowns on 163 last year, 11 on 222 this year. I'll say this, though, Dwayne, I think we're pretty good about not trying to say that we could go out there on the field and make this pass or make this catch. But maybe Miles Sanders doesn't need to be coming to us saying that he could step in and just become a fantasy analyst, because he said that not to draft him seems like a pretty bad call on your part, Miles. So joke isn't on us for not drafting Miles Sanders. It's on Miles as I'm just crying as the entire entire family leaves with their belongings. Let's talk about the Giants, Dwayne. Just again, another down performance from Saquon. He got you guys a lot of really good weeks in the first half of the year, but just hasn't been there lately. And I don't know, man. He had 2 catches for 20 yards. Like early on in the second quarter, I thought he actually looked a little more juice than he had in past weeks. I didn't completely think the neck injury was necessarily holding him back. That said, it is a neck injury. And then you look at the snaps, and clearly, even if I didn't think it was holding him back, the Giants seem to think so, because this got split right down the freaking middle. Breida, Brightwell, Saquon, looks like they all played within a snap of each other, all huddling around that 33% mark. So Saquon did still find a way to get 11 touches, but man, that is some rough usage. Blowout game script aside, what are your thoughts on Saquon the rest of the way?
Yeah, I mean, he's still going to be in the RB1 conversation. We just need him to be healthy. Like, that's the main thing. We're just going to have to monitor, what is Saquon looking like for next week? Because we now know that if he's limited all week, like a potential outcome is that we get this 30%, every back having 30% of the snaps again. He still led the team with 47% of the rushing attempts, but we've just been used to Saquon being the, that true every down workhorse, right? Getting 75 to 80% of the rushing attempts, all the passing down work. They didn't use him at all today. On the passing downs. Well, 7% of the long down and distance. He didn't play any of the 2-minute offense. That went to Breida. So we'll just have to monitor it. But as long as he's healthy, it doesn't look like it did earlier in the season. And the Giants, look, Brian Daboll's done a great job. But I think over the last several weeks, we're starting to see like the Giants just don't have the talent on their offense, or on their team, period, that some of these other teams do. And it speaks to the coaching job that staff has done. But this is a team that's struggling, and I think we're starting to see what they really are, and that's obviously trickling down to Saquon Barkley. So we'll have to wait and see with the health, but I think at worst, still a low-end RB1 as long as he's healthy.
Daniel Bellinger did suffer a rib injury, so keep an eye out on that. Was not able to play his usual every down role accordingly. We had Richard James pop off a little bit. I will say those 7 of those 9 targets came in the second half with them pretty much in straight up comeback mode. I don't think the Eagles were paying too much attention to him at that point. So Darius Slayton remains the only wide receiver that I'm even somewhat okay playing, but even then, we're talking a wide receiver 4. What's up?
I didn't see any notes on Slayton if he was hurt. It was definitely his lowest route participation game, but it could have also been blowout. Let's just rest our starters kind of thing. So
yeah, they put Tyrod in at the end, and like that's when Richard.
I saw Tyrod go in. Okay, cool. All right,
yeah,
cool.
Ty got through a touchdown. Love to see that. All right, Ravens took down the Steelers 16-14. The battle of backups basically. Ravens +2 cashed under. I'm sorry, it cashed. Good one, Ian. Under 36.5 also cashed here. So with Baltimore, Tyler Huntley got sent into the concussion protocol and ruled out after just 12 pass attempts and 9 carries. He got 9 carries just in that short span. That is wild. Brought in Anthony Brown. I do believe we saw Harbaugh say that he's optimistic that Huntley has a chance to get through the protocol and play by week 15. I believe based on how their playoff odds are looking, like they really don't need to rush Lamar Jackson back. I think I saw some reports this morning saying that week 16, a little more realistic there for Lamar. So really, Dwayne, we're going to keep, I've been calling him this, like Mark Andrews is you're going down with the ship type of fantasy player. Yeah. Like, come on, we can't bench the guy. I know it sucks, but it's Mark Andrews. Like at this point, I don't have anything else. Like come on.
Like the reality is he's probably playing hurt. Like since he got hurt in I believe it was week 6, even though he came back and he played before he missed time, like since then, he's not been the same Mark Andrews. Now he's still getting the targets. He's still getting all the routes, just like you mentioned, 96% route participation. No other tight ends get that. Like Travis Kelce doesn't even get to be on the field that much. 27% target share. So he's not just out there. He's earning targets, but only 50% of his targets were catchable today. So it's just, there's a lot of things going on with Mark Andrews, but yeah, I agree. You're just going down with the ship. It's still hard to not rank him, as the second best tight end in fantasy. Like just because you keep seeing this every single week, you're like, well, it's eventually got to break his way. Like I wrote about him this week in my rankings. I'm like, he's kind of due. Well, he still do. Like I could just copy and paste the same thing. I don't even have to write that next week, Ian. I can just paste it over and reuse it for the article. Looking at the 27% target share we saw today. But yeah, I'm with you. You just got to ride this thing. The other thing, I got to go to you. Like you're the Ohio State Buckeye guy. What are your thoughts on JK today?
I thought you were going to say Georgia losing sleep over it, Dwayne. Those are my thoughts on it. It was
I won't do that to you.
It was good to see. I do kind of agree. I saw Dr. Evan Porras from Fantasy Points. He's been on this pod loads of times over the years, but I mean, he brought it up too. Even the 44-yard run Dobbins had, I mean, wide open hole. And I was kind of surprised he didn't house call it, to be honest. So it was nice that he did find the end zone on the next carry. It's hard to really look at a 15 carry, 120-yard performance and not be impressed. I did not get eyes on every single play of this game, though. So more on that. But once again, Gus Edwards averaged over 5 yards per carry in his own right. And then you pull up the stats and the usage, and they're awfully similar. So yeah, Dobbins and Gus, if they can keep averaging 5-6 yards per carry like they have over these past years, they're going to be just fine. I'm not all that optimistic in it keeping up, though, especially without Lamar Jackson next week. I mean, Dwain, if it was only Dobbins and Gus, I'd feel better, but we still got Kenyon Drake coming in and stealing almost a fifth of the snaps. Dobbins, okay, probably back into that Isaiah Pacheco, Jamal Williams, maybe even Zeke sphere, like that low end RB2 area, but we're not going to get any targets. We had none here. There's never, I'm sure the Ravens will tell us like in July, that's always a fun offseason storyline. They're going to throw the ball more with their running backs this year, but it's been a lie a good 3 or 4 years running. I don't think that's going to change here coming into week 15. For me, Dobbins, low end RB2, borderline RB2. I'm not going to be chasing this performance and calling him a must start.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you hit on all the main things. 39% of the rushing attempts, but still Gus was involved with 34%. You mentioned Kenyon Drake playing some of the passing downs. So it's just we need Kenyon Drake to just kind of go away. And we really need one of these guys to like be the 50% guy, right? And then the other one get 30%. And then the quarterback can handle like the other 20%. But that's not what we have so far. And as much as we may get excited about Dobbins, I don't know that we will see it this year. Like, I mean, what's the incentive for them to just run him into the ground? I mean, I guess as we get closer to the playoffs, if he's looking stronger and stronger, I mean, maybe that happens, but it's kind of one of those things that it's going to have to be proven to us. And even once we see it, the next week we'll be wondering, is he going to get it again? Or is it really just going to be back to the way it used to be?
He's a 15 to 20 carry running back with no pass game role. Like it's like Deontay Foreman in an offense that we probably feel a little bit better about on a week-to-week basis. So that's all fine. J.K. Dobbins was someone that we didn't know if he was going to play football again this time last week, but I think similar to guys like Zonovan Knight, like James Cook, let's remember it's okay to get excited. Just try to keep that relative to what we should be expecting the rest of the way. On the Pittsburgh side of things, we did see Najee Harris find the end zone. Still, though, 57% snap rate. They are not saying they're in love, but if they are, that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Jaylen Warren continuing to play far more than any RB2 that we've seen under Mike Tomlin's, really, and especially Matt Canada's Pittsburgh Steelers offense. So really with Najee, I mean, he didn't even have he had 3 targets out there, but when Najee is going out there and he can't even get 15 touches, man, like, no, he's not going to be able to make up for the inefficient production that we have seen now for 2 years running in Pittsburgh. So not adjusting anything with Najee. He's someone that I don't think is a must start and hasn't been a must start for quite a while now. Whether he's going to be even in the top 24 down the stretch remains to be seen. And the passing game, man, like we did lose Kenny Pickett. Another confusing concussion protocol thing. I'm not sure if he got injured again, but he initially got cleared to return. Then he got taken back out. I think I saw he's not officially concussed. He's just in the concussion protocol. So here we are, Dwain, December 12th. I still have less idea what a concussion is than ever. We just see Trubisky come back in, and we could go through the specific stats between both the guys. They've both been really bad this season by whatever metric you want to pull up. And accordingly, we have Deontay Johnson with the league high 113 targets without a touchdown. George Pickens still flashes once or twice a week, but not getting enough opportunity to feel good about him moving forward. You got anything else to say about Pittsburgh? It's been one of the more disappointing offenses in the league. Sure.
No. I mean, we know what this offense is at this point. It's pretty much the same story each week. So, I mean, yeah, we can move forward.
Chiefs took down the Broncos 34-28. Looked like this one was getting out of hand early, but credit to Denver for covering at the end of the day at +9 over cash with ease at 44.5. So starting off on the Chiefs side of things, hey, one of those games, you know, Mahomes and Josh Allen, they just have that fantasy gene in them where they probably don't have a great real life game. I mean, Mahomes threw 3 interceptions and was a major reason why the Broncos were able to kind of claw their way back into this in the first place, but we still got plenty of that Mahomes magic. And when you look up in fantasy, that's all we care about at the end of the day. I'm sure this will result in another top 5, worst case, top 6 or 7 performance on the week. And a lot of that yardage was going to Jerick McKinnon, Dwain. Now, he's someone that we've talked about on this podcast as like a nice little late season edition. I'm not going to say I was, screaming from the rooftops to start him specifically this week, which is funny how that always seems to work out. But this was always a thought with McKinnon, who now this year, man, he's outscored Isaiah Pacheco by a good 17 fantasy points on the entire season because of how much more those receptions are worth than rush attempts. I mean, think about that, man. It's specifically 16 more PPR points than Pacheco this year. Pacheco has an extra 42 touches over McKinnon, but when they're all on the ground, it just doesn't really matter, especially when we're not getting the full-time goal line role with Pacheco that we usually, assume is going to be there for the early down back in the equation. So on the one hand, in Kansas City, it is just a 2 running back backfield. And the fact McKinnon can have these sorts of performances is great, but we've also seen long stretches of the season where McKinnon's role hasn't been all that different, and he's not nearly this involved in the passing game. So thoughts on how to treat Pacheco and McKinnon moving forward, because it seems like Pacheco is still going to be able to give us those 15 touches per game. And hey, number one ranked scoring offense. We saw it most of the last 3-4 weeks. He usually will find the end zone once, but not exactly a guarantee. Pacheco versus McKinnon rest of the way.
Yeah, nothing changes for me. Pacheco's the one you can start. McKinnon, like if you're playing a 16 teamer and it's PPR, sure, you can throw him out there, but we just never know when it's coming. And today obviously he came through in a big way with the 6, receptions, 113 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air. And that one play from Patrick Mahomes was insane. Just the little flip, and then there's nobody there to cover him, so it's almost like a busted coverage. It's almost like the Tyreek picking up the fumble thing. It's just one of these weird plays where you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll take it. I'll take the 50 yards and the touchdown. But I think your point, though, is still, you made it last week. Like McKinnon is one of these guys that if something happened to Pacheco, oh my God, like what you could have with Jerick McKinnon would be huge. And he's still not rostered in a lot of fantasy leagues. Yeah. So he is a guy that could be a true difference maker. You think people were excited about Travis Homer this morning? Can you imagine if all of a sudden Pacheco was out, what people would be doing for McKinnon? And rightfully so. So I think this is just a really good reminder of that. And we've seen the Chiefs in the past, like suddenly dwindle down to where there's kind of a guy they got to use, and it can be really good. And I mean, that makes sense. Like, look at the offense that we have here. But yeah, Pacheco's still the guy that you can play as your low end RB2. McKinnon, tough to have him in the lineup, unless you're playing in a really deep league. But man, absolutely shouldn't be setting on waiver wires.
2 other guys we always talk about in this offense. Travis Kelce, another letdown. This one was more on him than anything. I mean, he dropped a 10-yard touchdown and was officially charged with 3 drops on the afternoon. So, Dwain, unfortunately, we got to hold our guys accountable. Got to bench Travis Kelce here down the stretch in fantasy. I kid. And good news, guys, Juju Smith-Schuster did overcome these back-to-back duds he's had since coming back from the concussion. Team high 11 targets. He caught 9 of them for 74 yards and a touchdown that was more so Patrick Mahomes scramble drill induced. But guess what? That's one of the main reasons why so many of us were told to draft Juju back there in the summer. So, hey, right there in the top 24 again, Dwain. Thank you for talking me off a mini ledge with it last week. He's had the route participation back in a good amount. And, I definitely felt good after digging a little bit deeper into this Broncos defense and seeing that they had some troubles against receivers, spending a little bit more time in the slot this season. So Juju, Kelce, Pacheco, McKinnon to an extent, and obviously the godfather of them all, Patrick Mahomes, feeling awfully good going into what's a pretty smashable fantasy playoff stretch. Go ahead.
Nope, sorry. We're good. Feel good about all those. Yep, go ahead. Broncos. Ian, let's talk about the Broncos.
Love it. Love you, Dwain. We are excellent transitions sometimes. All right, with the Broncos, Russell Wilson, man, he was coming back, honestly playing some of the best ball we've seen this year, and I get it. That bar has not been high. 3 touchdowns, though. I mean, we hadn't gotten that since that Raiders game that happened freaking forever ago in week 3 or week 4. So come back.
He's gonna have to get some more toilets now.
No, come on, man. I wasn't gonna bring it up, but all right. Look, man, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't know. The guy gets concussed. I feel like we can lay off the bathroom jokes for a week, but you know what? It has been a long season of it. So we'll see if Russ can clear that protocol, get more passing touchdowns than bathrooms in that mansion. And I want him to be healthy enough to compete for the bathroom title. I think that's a fair way of putting it, Dwain. But with this offense, we also had Courtland Sutton out of the picture, which led to the Jerry Jeudy explosion. Not 1, not 2, 3 touchdowns for those counting at home. Courtland Sutton has 1 touchdown this entire season. Jeudy only had 6 touchdowns touchdowns in his career coming into this game. I mean, it's good to see, Dwain. This was a reasonable enough matchup for Jeudy. And with Sutton out of the picture, I didn't feel good about it necessarily, but I still had him as, an upper end wide receiver 3 that I did answer, some level of start sit questions confidently enough with him. Overall confidence level in Jeudy continuing to come close to booming down the stretch if we are getting Brett Ripien under center.
Yeah, I think that doesn't honestly worry me that much because Russ has been so bad. It probably won't be worse than Russ. Now, Russ, to your point, was playing well today. So maybe there is I just don't, I struggle to think all of a sudden there's this new ceiling for the Broncos offense after all these weeks. So honestly, Brett Ripien is probably the same thing almost. I hate to say that, but as having Russell Wilson, I think the bigger factor is when's Cortland Sutton going to come back, right? Now, I think Jerry Jeudy we're starting to see is probably the better player than Cortland Sutton.
Probably. He for sure is.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and when he's been on the problem is availability for Jerry Jeudy. We never get to see it long enough, right? And so, but from a pure standpoint of looking like when you look at all the targets per yards per route, targets per route run, all that kind of stuff, like he looks better than Cortland Sutton. He's always been a guy that we know has flashed the ability to get open, right, and look like he could have some explosive play, ability to his game, but he's just never been able to piece it all together. So it's nice, to see this game today for Jerry Jeudy. If you are a Jerry Jeudy fan, like this is your day, like you've been waiting for this. But I do think when you get Cortland Sutton back, like it just makes it that much more muddy. I think you'll probably still be ranking Jerry Jeudy as right now, like this week I had him as a high-end wide receiver 3. Yeah. If Cortland Sutton's back, like he probably drops to mid-range, low-end wide receiver 3 because Cortland Sutton's a wide receiver 4. But it's just enough to be a pain in the ass, right, for Jerry Jeudy. And the fact that Dulcich is still playing well. Like Dulcich had an 18% target share today. So in a bad offense where you've got 3 mouths to feed, that's not good. If we can get it down to just being 2, we saw Dulcich have a nice game last week. This week it was Jerry Jeudy having a nice game. We can handle that. Like, but once there's 3 of them, that's a problem.
We do have a winnable stretch, Cardinals, Rams, and Chiefs over these final 3 games. So if Sutton does stay out and we can finally condense everything around Jeudy, we'll be feeling better. That said, I'm with you, Dwain, in terms of ranking it. Like when Jeudy was out all those weeks, we didn't feel good about ranking Sutton higher. We don't feel good about ranking anyone higher in this offense because of how bad it's been all year. I mean, 28 points, that's the most points of the entire season. I think they were sitting at 23. 23 points was their season high point total in a freaking December football game. Absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think we're getting a running back to ever emerge out of here. I mean, Latavius Murray is now back into a 3-man committee. Though Mike Boone did suffer an ankle injury. We'll see, how bad off he is. But Marlon Mack, man, blast from the past, return of the Mac. What a jam. 66-yard catch and run on his screen. Had a nice stiff arm along the way. So that's probably enough to at least make it a 2-back committee. And we couldn't even confidently start Latavius Murray when it was a 1-back workhorse situation, Dwain. 2022 Latavius Murray with the Broncos and like 2018 Kalen Ballage with the Dolphins. Those are the only 2 times I can remember having this like 15 to 20 touchback and being like, no, I'm good. I see the utilization. I recognize it. I am good. I continue to be good on Latavius Murray and Marlon Mack the rest of the way. 49ers took down the Buccaneers 35-7. Brock Purdy blowing out Tom Brady. What a time to be alive. 2 claps for you, Brock. 49ers covered 3.5, over cashed at 38.5, just ever so barely. So with Purdy, he completed 2 passes for, I believe, 0 yards in the second half. So this was not a situation where, he had to completely put the team on his back for 60 minutes and all that. But guess what? Mr. Irrelevant has been, jammed down our throats all freaking week by the mainstream media. We get it. Now he's Mr. Relevant. Okay. Let's move on now. He's just the quarterback at this point. Number 8 highest PFF passing grade of the week, 4th in yards per attempt, 3rd in adjusted completion rate, just a 5.9 yard average target depth. But guess what? That's not really abnormal in the Shanahan offense. All those yards count equal in fantasy land. So who cares about the style points involved? Thoughts on what Purdy can do for this 49ers offense, Dwain? Pretty good first step. And again, not crazy. We've seen guys like Nick Mullins, be able to CJ Beathard even at least have relevant fantasy guys emerge from this offense. And especially with things continuing to condense, I am confident that Purdy can, maybe not lead them to Super Bowl, but at least keep this offense above water.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week. Like if there's any offense in the league where you can just have someone drive the bus, like it's this one. You've got plenty of weapons. You've got someone that schemes it up with, Kyle Shanahan. So yeah, I think it's fine. Jimmy G wasn't lighting the world on fire. I mean, I think you're looking for 200 to 250 yards passing out of this offense, each week. I know it was 186 today, but to your point, they didn't need to do anything in the passing game in the second half. They only dropped back to pass 41% of plays today. So that means they ran the ball 59% of the time. So I think that will always be a challenge if the 49ers, and they've got a good defense, they've got playmakers, so they can get out the leads. In these kind of scenarios, you're just not going to see them feel that they've got to really do anything more than just run the ball in the second half of games. So that'll always be a challenge, but it's great for Christian McCaffrey, man. We got another game today where we did not have, it's our third game in the data pool, right, without Elijah Mitchell since he's been a 49er, and it looked really good again. And he wasn't playing at the end because it was a blowout. That's when Jordan Mason really got most of his work today. So McCaffrey, top 3 running back, maybe your RB1 the rest of the way, like 29.3 fantasy points today, 68% of the snaps, 79% route participation. Amazing. I don't even need to name all this crap. Like it's Christian McCaffrey. Like he's doing Christian McCaffrey stuff. They're still trying to protect him on the ground, Ian. They're not giving him, 60, 70% of the rushing attempts. He had 40% today, but very efficient on those plays, and we know how the 49ers offense can work.
With McCaffrey, 33, count them, Dwain, 33 consecutive non-injured or traded games with 100+ yards and or a touchdown. Man, he's going to finish with 99, I'm going to be setting a hangnail at some point, but this still is at least semi-true at this point in time. With the passing game, unfortunately, we did have Deebo Samuel suffer what is believed to be a high ankle sprain, could very well, and I would say likely will knock him out for the remainder of the regular season. Hopefully he can get back for some January football that the 49ers will certainly be participating in. So if you take Deebo out of the equation, Dwain, we'll see a little more Danny Gray, maybe some Ray McLeod. Juwan Jennings just has a little more consistent role. But really, this could finally condense the passing game down to Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. Obviously, though, Christian McCaffrey, also a candidate to lead the way during any given week. Thoughts on how Deebo Samuel impacts the rest of this offense?
Yeah, I think it's huge for Kittle. They really are battling for targets in a similar area. It's also huge for McCaffrey. Really, Ayuk, he's the guy they go to against man. He's the guy they go to deeper down the field. So I don't think his role's really changed, that much, right, since CMC got here. Obviously, there's a little bit less to go around. They're trying to work everybody in, but I think it's the biggest for Kittle. McCaffrey was already really getting his. So Kittle had a 25% target share today. That's only 5 in a game where you didn't have to throw the ball very much. But if we get in a game where it's a little more competitive, that could turn into 7 or 8. You get 7 or 8 targets to George Kittle a week, you're going to have some really good things happening. You're going to get some ceiling performances out of Kittle. So I think it is an exciting time to be a George Kittle fantasy manager, and maybe he can really come through for us down the stretch.
On the Buccaneers side of things, Dwain, Byron Leftwich doesn't care about fantasy football. He's trying to go out there and score points and win real life games. And I won't replicate.
He and Arthur Smith. Yeah, they're,
But Arthur Smith goes on this rant after they win a game and they scored 30 points. And they're like, hey, how come Kyle Pitts didn't get more targets? And he's like, because I don't give a shit about Kyle Pitts' targets when we're winning games and scoring a lot of points. It doesn't quite hit the same way when Leftwich is trying to make that. And your offense has scored 7 points in the first, excluding that crazy comeback. This offense hasn't been able to score all freaking season long. They're 27th in points per game going in this year, and that's going to fall and be even lower after this one. So we can continue to go all the way around all the metrics that point to being a bad offense, but you guys got lives. We don't need to continue to bury Leftwich, but come on, man, just don't come at fantasy football for no reason. You know what's making a lot of money for the real life football? A lot of people paying your salaries, Byron Leftwich, the taxes coming out of fantasy football. All right, I said I wasn't going to rant. Now I'm getting right into that. So apologies, Dwain. Back on track here. We did have Leonard Fournette playing through the pain as he's been doing, and he's continued to keep on keeping on, carving out a major role in this backfield. Last week it was 60-40 in favor of Fournette. This week Rachaad White did have the slight lead. That said, it did seem to be more of a thing, honestly, where the game got out of hand and it just kind of kept White out there. Him losing a fumble in the fourth quarter, I'm not sure that's going to help matters. Look, Leonard Fournette, it's one of those things too where this is even, in my opinion, based on what we've seen for the entire season, Montgomery to Herbert, Pollard to Zeke to Pollard, those ones I can really wrap my head around. But like Rachaad White hasn't been this world beater this entire season behind Leonard Fournette. If anything, they both just really benefited from being in an offense that's throwing the ball to running backs more than any other offense other than the Los Angeles Chargers. So for me, Rachaad White, Leonard Fournette, whatever. They're just guys at running back. But when they're going to get 5 to 8 targets per game, today Rachaad had 5, Fournette had 7. That's the role we're looking for. I mean, you look back at the Cleveland game when White did get to have the featured role. He wasn't incredible, but he got a ton of opportunity, and that's all we're looking for in fantasy land. So in this one, I'm not sure. I don't think we're going to see them both finish as top 12 running backs again like they did last. I think they were both top 20 running backs, last week. I don't think they're going to get there without either of them having to score a touchdown. But with Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette, Dwain, I think both guys are going to catch 5 passes more weeks than not. And if you can guarantee 5 receptions for a running back, it's going to be tough to keep them out of worst case, kind of that upside RB3 range. Where are you thinking about these guys for the rest of the year, assuming they're both healthy?
Yeah, they're in the high end RB3 range, low end RB2. You don't know which one's going to be where. The problem with them, right, is they're fine if you're using them as your RB2. You don't want to flex them though. Like you'd rather use a receiver. Like you'd rather use a receiver that's going to be on the field, you know? So that becomes the challenge with guys like this. Like if you're loaded at receiver and you're stuck with Rachaad White or Leonard Fournette as your RB2 and you've got a really nice RB1, you're fine. You're golden. I don't want to be playing these guys in my flex though. That's where it's tough for me. 72% of the rushing attempts, you mentioned it, you know, so that's for Rachaad White. So we'll see if that were something that all of a sudden stuck, that would change things for us, right? We would then feel like, okay, well, fine. Rachaad White at that point would move into more of that mid-range RB2. Now, Leonard Fournette did get most of the passing down work, 69% of the long down and distance, 62% of the 2-minute offense. So if you will, Ian, you know, Leonard Fournette is the Tony Pollard in this one, and Rachaad White is the Ezekiel Elliott. But they're fine as your RB2. If you're having to use them as a flex, just not quite as ideal unless maybe one separates from the other. But I'm with you. I don't really see it happening. And it very well today could have been more to do with the, you know, Leonard Fournette coming in with the sore foot and trying to rest him at the end of the game.
Have you seen anything when they've been together? They lean more on Lenny in the red zone to just the eye test. It seems like whoever's on the field kind of stays on the field.
No, I've just seen it be a little bit more random as well. It's kind of like, hey, who has the drive? Who was out there? I know a lot of people tried to make a big deal of that last week because Rachaad White scored the touchdown. Man, we like Rachaad White too, but I feel sometimes like I just have to be anti-Rachaad White because so many people are for Rachaad White that I have to be like, okay, and you already did it. It's like, can we tap the brakes? He really hasn't even been better than Leonard Fournette. Like they've both been similarly poor. And you've already said it. The way they score their points is catching the passes.
One of those things where I think Rachaad White has been a little better. I agree with the eye test. It says he's a little more explosive, but when neither guy is averaging more than 4 yards per carry this season, like, can we really be freaking out about either one that much? I would not. Unfortunately, Chris Godwin's streak of 6+ receptions comes to an end. Still did finish with 5. Would have had that 6 if he could have caught a short touchdown. Unfortunately, he dropped it. And then Russell Gage came out of nowhere. He's been back the last few weeks. He catches the touchdown. So that was a nice little sheesh there for Godwin managers. But man, this was just, I've said throughout the year, I don't think Tom Brady's arm has fallen off his body. We've said how this isn't exactly Peyton 2015. This isn't Drew Brees in 2020. This was probably, though, Tom Brady's, I think, worst game of the season from a pure throwing the football accuracy standpoint. This reminded me of Rodgers' game against the Titans on Thursday night, where it's like, okay, I don't think this has been him all season, but if you just watch this game, like, you could very well have those takeaways, and I wouldn't blame you based on this specific 60 minutes of football. So, I mean, he had Scotty Miller, who I know he has the freaking catch radius of a house cat, but really open on a potential 44-yard score, badly underthrown. Julio Jones, 68-yard score, badly underthrown. Mike Evans, wide open, 9 yards in the end zone, threw the ball at his feet. Again, wasn't all on Brady. He had the Godwin drop that turned into a Gage touchdown. He threw a 68-yard touchdown to a wide open Mike Evans. That got nullified on a holding penalty. So it's just unfortunate, man. Like Brady, if he's not going to lead the league in dropbacks and pass attempts, he's going to be pretty close. Like 55 pass attempts for Tom Brady here, Dwain. The fact we haven't gotten anything close to a boom out of this offense, it's been madness, man. I remember in week 6, 7, like joking around, like, oh, it's going to be week 15, week 16, like, all right, guys, I know it's been rough, but really, this is the week the Buccaneers finally catch their stride. But it's become a living nightmare, man. We got our volume, but none of these guys, like the fact that, again, we have this offense condensed around Godwin, slightly lesser extent, Evans, and we have these two pass catching running backs. And I think Godwin's the only like must start guy in the Buccaneers offense.
Yeah, he is. He's the only one that's the must start. Dude, and just the penalties, the untimely penalties, like you could just see it kind of all unfolding on Brady's face. Like, Brady doesn't like it when they miss a big play. I kind of felt for Donovan Smith because he gets a lot of holding calls. I think he leads the NFL in holding calls this year. He's their left tackle. But you could just like when I watched Brady after that play, like I just felt like it meant more to him than ever. I think he was basically just like, "Fuck, can anything go right?" And I'm sorry for dropping the F-bomb, but that's basically what I thought. Is this guy going, "Oh my God, like nothing can go right this year. We can't make a big play." And he's not used to having to deal with that, man. Now he has had some years where he had to deal with that, with the Patriots, but it's not been what he's been used to since he's been with the Buccaneers. But yeah, they just don't look the same, and they've not been able to crack the way defenses are now playing. They've just not been able to solve it. Now, the offensive line challenges have also not helped that, right? I mean, they've lost so many good offensive linemen over the course of the season, and it started early. It started in the preseason. Like, so this has been going on all year, and it just kind of is what it is. But I totally agree. None of them are a must start. And even with Godwin, like, it's a wide receiver too. Like, normally, if you thought, man, you're Brady's number one target, getting 10, 9, 11 targets every game, like, that's a wide receiver 1. But it's only a wide receiver 2 in this version of the Buccaneers offense.
I know, Dwayne, we like to keep it clean more often than not. And I do think that, using the F word as a filler, like, okay, we can be better than that. But when you see Tom Brady lose by 28 points to Brock Purdy, yeah, fuck, man. What is this all season? Oh, and then, all right, let's move on here. Panthers 30, Seahawks 24. Carolina covers as 3.5-point dogs. Over cashes at 44.5. So, man, if you would have told me before today, it's like, hey, Panthers are going to score 30, really move the ball with some consistency, I'd be like, all right, DJ Moore picking up another good game with Darnold. Maybe the backfield's got some clarity. Nope. This is like the Atlanta Falcons, pretty much nightmare scenario all over again, where maybe the Panthers can score with some unforeseen consistency down the stretch. I would not bet on it. But guess what? Even if they do, I don't think we can feel confident enough about any of these, snap shares and just pecking orders other than just, throwing a dart at them as wide receiver 3s or RB3s. Goose egg for DJ Moore. Now, he was open a couple times, potential 20, 30-yard gain down the seam. That the ball was thrown a little bit late. Also, potentially open for a 4-yard score. Darnold couldn't put it on him, but that's kind of life with Sam Darnold. As much as Sam Darnold, sadly, is a relative upgrade over what's been going on this year, it's not like we were all thrilled to have DJ Moore on the squad last year as well. So, boomer bust, wide receiver 3 at best. I thought we were getting back there to potential, low end, borderline wide receiver 2 territory. Not quite, not this year. But even more concerning, Dwayne, is this ever evolving backfield. So, when originally Christian McCaffrey got traded, it was actually Chuba Hubbard as the lead back. He quickly got injured, and Deontay Foreman took over well. That said, we saw this funky stretch there where they had a Thursday night game and Chuba actually was a little bit banged up. So that was his first game back. And then we had some bad game script. These last 2 weeks following, this last week, I guess, following their bye, probably the closest thing we've seen to them being at full strength since that original game when Chuba got hurt. And yes, it is leaning in Foreman's favor. And if we can get 21 carries out of the dude, okay, I'd bet on him finding the end zone more times than not. But clearly with Chuba taking some of that pass down work, accounting for 17 touches in his own right. And we got to get Raheem Blackshear on the field for, 19% of the snaps as well. Basically the equivalent to Kenyon Drake going on in Baltimore over there. It just doesn't make things any easier. Again, for a Panthers offense that, good on them. I'm also not expecting them to score 30 points per game moving forward. So knowing that they got, let's see, the Steelers, the Lions, the Buccaneers, not exactly, the most dreadful schedule here. Thoughts on Foreman or Hubbard the rest of the way, Dwayne? Because I don't see either guy consistently or even getting close to cracking that top 24.
It's a boom bust RB2. He came through with the 21 rushing attempts a day, but the Panthers only dropped back to pass 40% of their plays because they were leading in the game. They were ahead pretty much the whole way. I don't remember exactly when the lead started, but most of the game they were leading the Seahawks. Geno had a rough kind of first couple of drives that really put, the Panthers behind. So you're going to have other game scripts that don't work out this way. right? And then all of a sudden that 50% of the rushing attempts, which is what he had today, 49%, 33% went to Chuba Hubbard. Then it becomes more problematic because then 21 rushing attempts turns into 10. I will say with the Panthers, since Steve Wilks has taken over, they are the number 4 most run heavy team in neutral game scripts. So they want to run the ball. They want that to be their identity. And I would too, if my quarterback was, Sam Darnold or before that, Baker Mayfield or PJ Walker. Like, I get it. I know what they're trying to do. And their defense actually is pretty decent. Like, their defense is probably, like, if anything, you can at least call it underrated. Like, It's a scrappy little defensive unit. So when I look at this team, I'm with you. It's tough to get too excited about it. But I do think Foreman is the only one that you can play. He's still that boom bust. Chuba, I really still don't trust. It was nice. He got a little bit of the passing down work today. But again, in a bad script, like, he gets 7 touches on a bad offense, right? And so I think that's going to be a challenge. But it is funny, man. Chuba Hubbard scores a touchdown. Raheem Blackshear scores a touchdown. Deonta Foreman can't get a touchdown. Like, and he has 21 carries. So
he got his chances, though. They gave him, he got down the 1 yard line. They gave him another one, and then Chuba managed to reach the ball across. So
Chuba had 63% of the short down and distance. So that could have just been one of those things that just worked out that way today based on, kind of the question you asked earlier about, trends with one of the other backfields. Like, it could have just been more to do with that. But something we can keep an eye on. I don't even know if we have to keep an eye on it. Do you want any Panthers? What's funny is the Panthers could win this division. What?
It's possible.
It's possible. Like, if they win out, they win it.
They'll get a home game. But now you said it, like Brian Burns in that defense. That was why when originally the whole like tear down the team, and that never made sense to me. Like, yeah, you need a quarterback, but there's a lot of teams that need a quarterback. Maybe, I don't know. I guess the Rams were offering 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. Maybe that could have been something a little more discussion. But the guys they have there now.
When were those picks? On 2029?
Just
the Rams don't have any first-round picks.
But I mean, the secondary, J.C. Horn had a pick today where he just timed the Metcalf route absolutely perfectly.
I thought he was going to take that back, and he fell at the end. It was out in front of him.
They got some dogs over there in Carolina. Over to Seattle, Geno Smith, the one guy just continuing to give us some weekly passing production. Gotta love it. Now, he had some mistakes out there. 3 turnover-worthy plays. Don't want to see that. But my goodness, 3 more touchdowns to the total. Geno Smith now from 2021 to 2022 has 30 passing touchdowns. From 2013 to 2020, he had just 29. So I'm with you right there with guys like Deshaun Watson, right there with Jared Goff, in that, even Dak Prescott, all those low-end QB1s. Geno certainly deserves to be in that group. And accordingly, Tyler Lockett, 6 straight games with a touchdown now. I mean, this dude is poised to clear 1,000 yards and or get 10 touchdowns for the 5th season in a row. More goodness out of DK Metcalf. Even Marquise Goodwin has been flashing a little bit here or there. Wouldn't say I'm confident enough to fire him up as anything more than a desperate boomer bust flex. And like, we're in the playoffs now, Dwain. I don't think, come on, we're not starting Marquise Goodwin in the playoffs, I hope. But hey, former track star going out there and making some plays. The big thing to talk about, though, is what the hell, Schefter? My life.
Tony Jones starter.
Come on, man. Like, where did that even come from? Like, it came from Adam Schefter. That's who it freaking came from. But you look at it, 9% snap rate, 91% for Homer. This wasn't wrong. This was freaking treason.
You know what, though?
This was a lie.
I'll take it because it made me bench Homer anywhere that I had a doubt. Where I had picked him up and thought, well, we'll have to throw him in this week. Like, I just benched him. And he only had 5.4 points. But to your point, Homer dominated 91% of the snaps, 64% route participation, 82% of the rushing attempts, 100% of the 2-minute offense, 100% of the snaps inside the 10, 93% of the long down and distance. Like, Tony Jones had nothing. You could not have been more wrong on whoever shared. This source should no longer be a source, if in fact there is one. Sometimes I think these source things are kind of funny per source. Okay. All right.
And hey, hand up, I did not fall for the Tony smokescreen. I appreciate you keeping me accountable comments. My answer to the Seattle Seahawks backfield was no, don't touch it. Because I even thought we were going to have more guys potentially involved in just Homer and Tony Jones. So, it's one of those things where, again, I think we just really tend to overhype whatever guy is just in the name. And we should be doing that. Like, it's pretty boring if we just, like, if Dwain and I just went through every single team and focused on, the top 10 player and just talked about how great they were. I don't think we get all that far, in our fantasy league. So I see why guys like Tony Jones are the big time players. I'm just I want some accountability out there because like that was an atrocious report. To say the guy's going to start and he has 2 touches in the entire freaking game. That's one thing I cannot get behind. So yeah, that sucked. It sounds like Dwain that Kenneth Walker or DJ Dallas have a chance to get back, but I believe it's a short week. So I was talking about that.
According to who? Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris Carson will also be back. They're going to re-sign him to the team, and he'll be back.
Too soon. Jeez. All right, they play on Thursday night. So let's say, Dwain, that we have these guys out again. Now they did I believe, they signed a random Wayne Gallman. That's who they signed. Wayne Gallman last week. So maybe it was too quick of a turnaround time for him to be active. But I did think that Homer was going to be the lead back as long as Kenneth Walker is going to be out of the picture. 91% snaps. I know it didn't go his way in this one, but that's as elite of a snap rate as we could ask for. Just wasn't a ton of opportunity to go around the backfield. If Walker and DJ Dallas are out ahead of a brutal Thursday night matchup against the 49ers, Homer, low end RB2?
Yeah, you could use him. Okay. The key is DJ Dallas has to be out too. It can't just be Kenneth Walker because the week before, and look, we've just seen them. We've actually seen DJ Dallas and Homer. We've seen what they want their roles to be. DJ really is, the guy that comes in and handles some of the early down work. Now, he handled passing down duties earlier in the season, but only because Travis Homer was injured. Then once Homer came back and was in the fold, he really did take, the passing down work back over, and Dallas just occasionally would spell Kenneth Walker. So I think if we had that scenario back, it probably would be DJ Dallas more in the Kenneth Walker role, Travis Homer more back in the role. And they probably split it a little bit more, right, than what, Kenneth Walker was getting. But it would need to be both of them being out, before I would trust it. And that's a possibility. I mean, neither one of them practiced at all last week. That's what made it so funny to me. It's like DNPs across the board. Travis, not Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, he's going to be a game time call. And, it's 50-50 that Kenneth Walker's going to play. I'm like, this is complete BS. This is totally, Pete Carroll with and I appreciate it. He is a glass half full kind of guy. He does this with everything. So it's not like it's his MO. He does it for all things in life. I don't think it's just injuries. He's one of these guys. He's very positive. I'm sure he pumps you up as a coach, but it's maddening, for fantasy managers. I just always lean to whatever he says, I dial it back by 50%.
I always prefer Cliff Kingsbury. Tell me everyone's a game time decision. Just no difference. Yeah. You're not going to give me anything. Zach Taylor just refuses to give medical updates on his players 9 times out of 10. If he knows something, then tell us. But yeah, we've been over the Pete debacle plenty of time. But hey, Pete Carroll, obviously, having a nice little year for himself. A lot of people are writing off these Seahawks. So good job by you from that perspective, Pete. Let's close things out with the Chargers taking down the Dolphins 23-17 on Sunday Night Football, covering as 3.5-point favorites, under cash at 54.5. Starting off with the guys that did get the W. Justin Herbert, man, what are we calling him? Social media throw after another. What has real life football Twitter never encountered a troll before? The amount of attention this Emmanuel Acho, I can't say his name, I don't know. The amount of attention they give this dude for just terrible analysis. You're doing exactly what he wants. Did we just ignore Skip Bayless's rise to the top of the industry for the last 20 years? You can be a troll. You can say a lot of crazy shit, get people mad at you. And if you're able to wake up and go about your day, you can probably get a decent media job in the year 2022, because that's how messed up our culture is. Really high highs, really low lows. Guys, look at people clicking more than anything else. So if you want to go just spout off nonsense, go ahead. But man, it's just ridiculous to even pretend like Herbert isn't at a minimum a great quarterback. I don't even want to get into it. Obviously plenty of people are already fighting that battle on social media, so I don't feel the need to join them, but really was incredible to see just 7-8 yard throws by Herbert. I mean, the one where Keenan's pointing at him right after, you could just tell that these are throws that, only so many few people can make. So yeah, we can talk about the low average target depth. And my comeback to that's always been pretty reasonable. Who are you going to throw the ball downfield to? Yeah, Mike Williams when he's back, and they did throw the ball downfield. Funny how that works, but I really do believe with as a receiver, you kind of create your own average target depth, and their only field stretcher on this team was Jalen Guyton, who's been out since week 3. And even him calling him a field stretcher, that's probably being a little bit nice to him. He's just a backup wide receiver who they throw deep to more times than not. So with the passing game, Mike, Keenan, 12 catches, 92 yards. That's a hell of a Keenan Allen line right there. Yeah, when these guys are healthy, we're feeling great, Dwayne, and we're finally seeing the boom from Herbert, where all of his guys, pretty much all of them are healthy, and all of a sudden he's playing some of his best football of the year. Funny how that works.
Yeah, man. Mid-range QB1 with QB, with high-end QB1 upside. Like, it's funny, like, for as much as like we go round and round around Herbert, like, I honestly, Ian, have never felt the need to make him less than a mid-range QB1. Like, because honestly, the other part of it is when you look at the rest of the quarterback pool this year, like, just like, who are you putting over him? Like, it was always hard to find, like, who, like, sure, you could make an argument for a Geno, right? A guy like that, there for a stretch, but it was always in my mind was like, it's just going to be really hard for Herbert to still not finish, as a mid-range QB1 once he got his weapons back. And I think that's just really what we needed. And, this was the first time all year where we've had both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen finish a game together. I mean, like,
it's wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think we need to really analyze it much further than that. And I'm with you. We have seen the data. Research shows that not that quarterbacks don't play a role, but the wide receivers do own their average depth of target. And so what was nice, with Mike Williams today. Now, this isn't always the case with Mike Williams and in the Joe Lombardi offense. I do think Joe Lombardi is part of this. I think he's running an offense that was designed for Drew Brees. Like, why not, like, just, run the same concepts, but make everything like 2 yards deeper, and I get it. You got to deal with pass rush and there's timing and all that kind of stuff. But, like, we saw Mahomes, what he did with Andy Reid's offense when he first took it over. A lot of the concepts were still the same. Everything was just a little bit deeper, right? And Justin Herbert shows you, like, dude, he's amazing at his ability to buy a little bit of time in the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, and still just throw an absolute laser. But what was nice was with Mike Williams tonight, he averaged 19.3 yards per reception. He had 6 catches for 116 yards. His, obviously the nice play was the rollout to the right, the throw back over the old John Elway style throw. Even Chris Collinsworth called that out. Just dropped a dime with pressure coming at him, over the top to Mike Williams on that big 55-yarder. So I think it's just simple, man. You've got all these weapons. Mike Williams can help you deep. Austin Eckler is going to nail you underneath. Keenan Allen's going to work the middle of the field. He's an absolute nightmare, on third downs. And then Josh Palmer, a guy that I haven't been, really that kind to, like, has played well over the last 3 to 4 games. Like, he's starting to change my opinion of him a little bit. Like, there's just plenty of weapons here, man. And we haven't even got to Gerald Everett yet. Gerald Everett had 8 targets tonight. Like, this is a potentially loaded offense. And so I look forward to it. I want to see Herbert succeed just because I'm tired of all the same stuff you're talking about. I don't get tied up in the middle of it, but we know Herbert's a good quarterback. Let's just move forward.
With Everett, what was the overall tight end usage, though?
I don't have it all. I just have 8 targets, 5 receptions, 28 yards. He's been stuck around that 60% route participation. I was kind of trying to keep an eye on him, tonight when I was watching the game. For whatever reason, like, I always watch tight ends. Like, I'm like, oh, off the field, he's not going to be over the 80%. But he was off the field a little bit. My guess is, though, it was a little higher tonight. He might have been more like 65, 70%. We'll have to see what the data says.
Were there some other guys out there? Any names?
Trey McKitty?
I just wanted you to say Trey McKitty. That was all I was trying to do.
I know you did. Okay. Well, there was also a Stone Smart. So
we do have Stone Smart getting some run out there as well. Got to. Austin Eckler continuing to do Austin Eckler's things. Even found the end zone with a nice little 4th down goal line plunge. He is a strong dude out there, despite, being a little bit smaller in stature. Chris Collinsworth did note another thing, man, saying he saw Mike Williams in practice like on Thursday or Friday, and he was hobbling around. So don't love hearing that, but you know what? He went out there on Sunday and did his thing. And as we know over the years, Mike has always been, first or second team. Get banged up and then go get back out there and keep on keeping on. Dude falls like a bag of bricks sometimes in those contested catches, man. But hey, out there tonight, making them and making plays. On their side of things, yeah. Hey, I've come on here, I think, been very fair to. I think he is really good. I think he's probably a really good quarterback in a fantastic scheme with incredible wide receivers. And because of that, you're getting a season not all that dissimilar to what Alex Smith had when he was with Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs. Shout out to former PFF GOAT Kevin Cole for originally, I think, coining the Alex Smith Tua comparison for this season. I get it. Probably not the, craziest thing to go to with Tyreek Hill changing teams, but that's who he is. That said, Dwayne, This was easily his worst performance of the season. Maybe it's just a Sunday night thing. I looked it up, and only this game and the Pittsburgh Steelers game are the only Sunday night games Tua's ever played. He just can't. He's waiting all day for Sunday night, and he can't handle
Kirk
it.
Cousins on our hands.
A new Kirk Cousins. Wow. Tua non-faithful is not going to like that. But with Tua, man, again, just 10 of 28 on the day. That's the only stat you need to hear. I mean, it was like 3 of 17. We had like an Austin 316 type of situation going on. That's not good when we're talking about your quarterback's completions and attempts. Luckily, one of those went for a 60-yard touchdown to Tyreek Hill. And guess what? Tyreek Hill, thanks to being the fastest freaking human on the field, if not planet Earth, also scooped and scored a random-ass fumble from Jeff Wilson and found his way to the end zone. That was absolutely insane. So Tyreek unfortunately did suffer an ankle injury in the second half, and he was getting it iced a lot, but I don't even think he missed any actual time with it other than the random play or two. He was back on the field more times than not. I guess at the end he was sitting a little bit more though, Dwain. Yeah,
they were definitely managing it. You know, it was almost like every third play or something he was taking off, kind of like the old Julio Jones treatment we used to see back in the day.
Yeah, Tyreek's been a serial abuser of that as well over the years, but he really does miss actual games, so we will take it. So a disappointing game for Jalen Waddle, disappointing game for Tua, but again, I think we've seen more than enough to continue to trust these guys the rest of the way. Big news could be in the backfield where Jeff Wilson suffered a hip injury and got ruled out, carted back to the locker room. Didn't seem, I mean, again, I was joking to Dwayne about this before the show. Like, when we see there's a difference between someone not being able to stand up on the field and getting carted and then hey, this is going to take a bit. Maybe you just want to get on the cart because you suffered a hip injury. Probably shouldn't be taking extra steps if we can help it. I don't know how long Jeff Wilson is going to be out. If he is though, Dwayne, we've seen this offense all year long, really not having any inclination to use Salvin Ahmed or Myles Gaskin behind either Mostert or Jeff Wilson. So I believe they got the Bills next week. Not a layup, albeit we have seen this, a little more banged up version, Von Miller-less version of the Bills defense not be quite as formidable. If Jeff Wilson is out, how high are you willing to go in the ranks with Raheem Mostert?
He'll be in the RB2 conversation. The problem with this running game is it just hasn't really looked good outside of a couple of games, and the offensive line has not really looked good. This is a scheme that is supposed to kind of look like on the ground, like they use a lot of the concepts from the 49ers, and it just doesn't look anything like it, to be honest. And they're trying to get creative. Like they run these inside, plays where they look like a toss to begin, like just to kind of give everything a little bit more time to set up. They're using a fullback. They're trying a lot of the same concepts that you see, with the 49ers, but they just haven't been able to get it going. But you're going to be in a top scoring offense, potentially as, 70 to 80%, of the snaps. That means Mostert's going to be viable. And the thing we haven't seen yet really from Mostert this year is we haven't seen him breaking the long plays, Ian. We got used to seeing that. We saw it in the preseason this year, even with Miami. I remember early, watching him turn the corner. I'm like, oh man, Mostert still got it. If he happens to need to be out there and play a lot, it's potentially, he's going to be able to score some fantasy points, but we just haven't seen that. We haven't seen the long runs, haven't seen the consistency, but usage, plays in a good offense. Obviously he's going to be in that RB2 conversation. Going to be hard though to get him as anything. I don't know, probably max. What are you thinking? RB 15, 14, somewhere in there is probably the top end of the range, and I'm guessing probably more mid than that.
They do get the Packers in 2 weeks at home. That's probably the one that I could see going a little bit on the higher end of things, but especially for the Bills. Ooh, another primetime game.
Saturday night.
Tua Cousins, man. Ooh, this could be problematic. We'll see if the Cousins curse persists here for Tua. That is going to wrap up another edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Everyone, we'll be back for 2 more of these. Dwayne and I will have you guys covered going into it. We're covering you into week 15. We'll cover you going to week 16. We'll cover you going to week 17. We will not cover you going to week 18. If you have a fantasy championship in week 18, that is your fault. We'll probably still do. I can't speak for Dwayne. He's doing a ton of stuff that you got to pay a ton of money for over at MB FantasyLife. We'll talk about it in a second there. PFF, we'll have the rankings. We'll have some good data. DFS Christmas. I'm not quitting football, but you guys know how it is. 365 days a year over here. But come on, it's just like kicker content. I can't morally get behind a week 18, season-long championship. So I refuse to do it. But Dwayne, I know you guys have a different strategy. So let people know where they can go purchase your product, whatever it is.
Yeah, you can purchase it all for free over at fantasylife.com.
Wow.
Yeah, you can get the newsletter. Just go to fantasylife.com. Make sure you sign up. You get it every morning. Just nice 5-10 minutes, of easy reading. Who doesn't want to start their day reading about football? It gets you in a better mood. Like, you're probably going to have a better day at work, right? You're probably going to perform better. You might even get a raise. And you're just think your mind's going to be at rest because you can get in there, you can make the waiver wire move, whatever it is you need to do before the rest of your league mates do. You can just rest easy. It's just better. Like, it's a stress-free life, whenever you have the newsletter, Ian. So yeah, you got to go check it out. Obviously, we've got a YouTube channel you guys can look at. Rankings, tiers, utilization, all that's over at fantasylife.com. You can check it out on the website. And lastly, yes, to make sure you understand, it is free.
Oh, thank God. I'm trying to help out the loyal listeners of the PFF Fantasy Football.
Hey, in this economy.
in this economy, indeed. All right, everyone. I'll be back on Tuesday with my guy Nathan Yonke going over some waivers, and I'll try to cook up some other fun shit to talk about. You guys know how it goes. So for Dwain, I'm Ian. Thanks so much for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.